Welcome back to Nerd Snipe, the only developer podcast hosted by developers for developers. I'm Ben, he's Theo, and this week we are going to be going over a lot of stuff.
Almost none of which is development.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, it's AI stuff. Like, it's kind of devs-ish.
DEFCON is not dev stuff.
I only did dev stuff at DEFCON, but
that's fair. The uniqueness of your DEFCON experience will be a very fun thing to cover. Yes. But before we can do that, we have a bunch of other random things we need to talk about, like Anthropic's watermarking chaos, Zuckerberg's new manifesto, alongside some fun things coming to Muse. I'm scared I'm going to be stuck as the meta in Muse Defender. Recently, that's been more and more so the case. It'll be fun. I think you have a bunch of fun stuff to talk about with the new Chinese open weight models.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a lot of opinions on 5.3, V4 Flash, and the Qwen 3.827B is a dope model.
Huh.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I saw somebody saying, like, now you can run an Opus 4.6 equivalent on your laptop, and that felt a bit much of a reach, but
on a laptop, no. 5090, yes, but we'll get there.
Okay. And of course, Grok 4.6 and GrokBot, your favorite model line, Grok Code Fast spiritual successors yet again.
It's a little too competent to be a successor to that, but it is a good model.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of fun things to talk about this episode, as you can tell, and I can't wait to tell you all about it after we tell you first about today's sponsor.
Today's sponsor is PostHog, the all-in-one suite of product tools that has, well, basically everything. I was going to do a gag here where I read out all of their tools from, like, product analytics, web analytics, session replays, feature flags, but, like, you can just look at this list here. There are way too many to go through in this one ad spot. So just take my word, they have everything you need to know exactly what your users are doing on your product. And what PostHog's done is they've taken all these data points they have and created a system where your product can basically drive itself. It sounds weird, but the way this kind of works is they have a couple different primitives. Like, one of them is signals, so that anytime an error happens, or maybe in a session replay you get a dead link, that is a signal. And they have scouts that can be constantly going deep on your product to find any regressions or issues that might come up. You get a really nice inbox to see all of the weird things that have been found. Then whenever something that needs a code change happens, they will just automatically spin off an agent that runs in its own sandbox, isolated environment, will do a root cause analysis, and then make a full verified fix, open up the PR, and all you have to do is merge it. PostHog's agent is one of many very powerful ways to use PostHog with agents. You can do it that way, or you can directly access it through their Slack bot, or maybe you want to build your own custom system. Like, whenever I use PostHog, I really like customizing the dashboards. Their MCP is awesome. They also have a CLI if you prefer working with it that way. They even have a desktop app to run and control agents that have the full context of your products. This whole system is just insane, and considering 97% of companies use PostHog for free since they're just so absurdly cheap, there's no reason to not add them to your product at nerdsnipe.link/PostHog. So I think the best place to start is with the watermarking stuff. Anthropic put out a giant blog post about their new watermarking system that's being introduced, I think, either now or in the next generation of models they do.
It's all new models will have this as of August 2nd, I think, is the cutoff. I might be wrong on that, but it's going forward, all new models will have this embedded in it, which means all of their outputs will too. Yeah. I had seen some speculation that text outputs that aren't just plain text, like outputs like the model talking to you, would be affected, but code wouldn't. And now there are official examples from Anthropic showing that code also will be affected.
Yeah, specifically with like comments and that kind of thing. It's a very interesting way they're doing this, because a lot of people thought that this would just be a metadata type thing. Like, when you generate Claude text, there would be some like metadata or whatever, but it's not. This watermark will supposedly work on any piece of text that has been generated by an Anthropic model. The way they did it is it's basically whenever you're generating text from an LLM, you get 6 tokens, and then you're going to have the like 7th, 8th, and 9th be generated next, or I guess it's 1 token at a time. So when that next token is being generated, there's a whole pool of tokens that could be. Sometimes you'll have a sentence where the next word it needs to generate, there's like a bunch of options that could fit with that. Maybe it's like a descriptor or something like that. And what this will do is this will clamp it down to always pick one specific like key for that phrase. So now that phrase is kind of keyed so that it's marked as a Claude output. It reduces the variance on that 1 token, and across very large pieces of text generated by a Claude model, you can just put that into the API. They can look at it, use their key, and figure out, oh, this was or wasn't generated by Claude.
I don't love the idea at all still. Like, first off, it's relatively trivial to get around this with very basic changes to the text, the output that happens. Like, not only can cheap existing models do this, you could probably do this with a super basic like glossary system where you literally just like on comment lines of code, take random words and swap them with something else that is an equivalent in like a glossary, like every 3 or so words, and you get around this trivially. It's even easier to get around than the image watermarks, which are already way too easy to get around. I think this is a stupid idea in all regards, and this is the government trying its best to do a thing that is wanted for good reasons. Like, this is all because of an EU mandate to make all LLM outputs and all generative AI outputs watermarked in some way that is traceable. This is a good faith effort to follow those requirements that is stupid and just makes no sense at all. This is reminiscent of like the broadcast TV license you have to buy in the UK if you watch any live media on your computer. So like if they catch you going to Twitch and you aren't paying the like 79 cents a day for this license, you get like harassed by the government. This is like that type of stupid thing where it sounds really good if you're only listening to the people who want it and not the people who understand it.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up here.
God, Europe is it's a very European place. But yeah, I hard agree. I also think that this is just going to make the Claude models worse. Like, this is going to make models, it's not going to improve the outputs a lot. They say in their blog post that watermarking does not impact the quality of Claude's output, but that's not true. If you are clamping the variance of certain tokens within the output, that's just going to constrain it to some level. Maybe it won't be the most aggressive thing ever, and it still can be fairly freeform, but the fact that the model now has to have this extra thing added, I don't know if this is going to be trained into it or this is going to be something that happens during inference time. Like, if during inference it can look at the probabilities of the next token, and then when it has one of these keyed tokens, it can pick the right one there, but then force it to be that one every single time. But for anything involving Claude Pros or whatever, Claude Pros already sucks, and you can already pretty easily identify it if you know what to look for. This is just going to make it even worse.
Yep. I also like the idea that, like, specifically in all the code examples I've seen, they always have comments in the code example, which means this might be legally mandated comments in code.
The thing that we hate from AI generated code, which is just walls of comments that mean nothing. We're going to have to get more of those because of the EU.
Yep. The best part is in the code example on Thoric's little site here, the comment is always explaining that the function cart total, under the function definition, by the way, sums the prices in the cart. Sorry, no, it adds up the item prices, or it add up the item prices, or sum the prices in the cart. I'm just regenerating over and over again because it's a demo of how the fork works. I'm sure FaZe will show it in the video a bit, but like, it's silly that this comment that means literally nothing is consistently being inserted in the code, and this example is the one being used because it both reminds me of how Claude models actually work, just putting in useless comments everywhere, but also because these comments will almost certainly be necessary for this type of watermarking to work, because without these comments, you have to just watermark the code, and good luck with that.
Yeah, oh God, can you imagine watermarked code? Like, is record suddenly becomes a watermark and you are now legally mandated to have is record all over your code base. Like, it's so stupid. I had an entire class in college about how you're not supposed to write a comment on every single line of code because it's stupid. Yeah, it's dumb. It's the right idea, bad execution, which is what most, especially European regulation, typically ends up being these days. I don't know. It's just annoying.
I wish I had more to say about this. I did put out a full-length video on this. It's one of those, like, it is what it is things, and what it is really stupid. So, yeah.
The only other thing I have is that I think it's extra stupid because we already have a system kind of like this for open weight models. Because, I don't know, have you heard of, like, speculative decoding at all?
Yeah.
It's like where you'll have the big model, like say you're running DeepSeek v4 Flash, that model will be generating its tokens, but like that's a heavy compute thing to where generating the next token, instead of having the model generate every single token, you have a much smaller model that was trained on the bigger model's outputs to predict the next like 5 tokens that it would generate there. Then it can compare the probabilities of what the big model would have done next to those 5 tokens and then either accept or reject those. And I was looking at it on some of the DeepSeek instances I was running on my DJX Sparks. it would take like 60 something % of the smaller model suggestions every single time. So like you can train smaller models on bigger models to predict what their output would have been. You could probably just use that to make a model that would detect some AI generated output. We already have like the pangram thing already exists. We already have ways of detecting this output. This is just going to make the models worse for no reason.
It's obnoxious. It is worth noting that since this is legislation, other labs are expected to start doing the same thing as well. It doesn't seem like any official standard has been made for this yet. There is intent to have that happen, but it's not happening. I would suspect this is going to be the usual, like some good faith law is introduced that isn't implemented particularly well. Every company has to do weird stuff to work through it and around it, and we just end up dealing with it as consumers in the end. This is all a waste of time, and this is one of those things that's going to look like really funny in the future. Like there are so many of the idea of like limits on how many texts and calls you can make on your phone plan. It just sounds funny now, but at the time it made a ton of sense. This is going to be one of those types of things where it just looks like silly because we did it at the wrong time. Or like people get really attached to their email address from their ISP. They would expect to get an email address from Comcast or Adelphia or Xfinity. That is just silly now. This feels like one of those things where at the time it seems like it almost makes some sense, but in retrospect, it's going to just be seen as stupid and a waste of time.
100%. And also, from what I know about this law, the law is not specific on how this has to be implemented. There's no rules there. So every lab can interpret this differently. This is Anthropic's interpretation. Who knows how the other labs will interpret it? I think OpenAI is interpreting it somewhat similarly, but are the open weight labs going to do that? Is Grok going to do that? Is Meta going to do that? It's dumb.
I feel like we're going in the fundamental wrong direction with this, where we're trying to watermark AI output.
Yeah.
That's not what we want, though. What we want is to know what is or isn't created by humans. Why are we trying to mark the AI output and not the human output? It's just we're going the wrong direction. And there has been efforts here. I believe C2PA is the main one, if I recall. Yeah, C2PA is the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. This is the right direction. They are doing some of the like AI marking stuff, which is stupid, but they're also working with camera manufacturers and operating system vendors and things like that to flag content that is human generated. So there will be certain metadata when you take a photo on your phone that indicates that photo was taken by a human on a real phone, instead of the opposite, which is we try to mark the AI generated stuff. There's already too many things that are AI generated that exist before any of this watermarking exists, and ways to remove those watermarks. Verifying human content is a much more valuable and like obviously the correct direction to go.
And also humans are incentivized to do it because they'll want to mark their stuff as human generated. Because this is already, actually, now that I think about it, this is how I already treat the internet. Like when I go on Twitter, I treat everything as AI generated except from people I know and follow. And like if it's someone new that I see a reply from or a post from, you can instantly look at it and be like, okay, does this seem AI generated? If it passes the Claude sniff test, then like, okay, is this a real person? Like if it's like a cartoon avatar with no followers, I just instantly assume it's a bot and then I just mute it and move on. I would love to have some system to prove that it is actually a human and just filter down to that. So yeah, that makes total sense.
Really funny. If every once in a while, one of your posts that you write, it's like, we're not sure if this is you. Can you turn on the camera and film yourself reading this post first?
Oh God. Okay, that's not how I want this to work, but I like the concept.
One last spicy take on this. This might become one of those weird things that gives Apple an undue advantage in like monopoly, because Apple's camera pipeline is super solid and well done. Apple's Face ID system is very reliable and well implemented across lots of different things. It's genuinely really easy to add some type of identity verification system to an iPhone app, even to like a website that you open on your iPhone. There are whole ecosystems like the big screen VR ecosystem, which is like a hardcore like nerd gamer thing that has a lot of like Android users in their ecosystem. In order to get the big screen VR's like faceplate printed to fit your face right, you have to use an iPhone. And they tell you in the onboarding, like find a friend or a family member with an iPhone and borrow it from them if you have to. This will take 20 seconds because Apple's ecosystem is so well supported and arguably built exactly for this type of use case. Apple devices might become the only way to really verify your identity.
Well, and they're already so good about things like privacy and implementing these things correctly, like the age verification, where an app can ask for age verification, but it gives you no extra context other than a Boolean that's exposed from the system that you know you can trust. You do the same thing for like a Face ID human verification. It's just a Boolean, and it's safe, and it's private, and it's on device. That would actually work,
Yeah,
that makes
so
total
once
sense.
again, Apple might be the solution, but also entrench their monopoly by being the only option that makes any sense at all.
God
good
bless
luck, Google.
Tim Apple. Yeah, Google.
It was really fun having yours on that one show.
Oh, that was good. We should do that again at some point, especially now that they're bigger. You haven't seen them in a while,
I've not
right?
seen them since they
Oh
grew
God,
up.
you
It's
need to
gonna
see
be-
them. Like Lucy she's just getting bigger, but still very cute and sweet and very soft and chill. Stripe, I thought he was going to turn into this big kind of chunky, derpy looking thing, but he's big and lean and muscular and kind of intelligent. He's not stupid, which is shocking. I really thought he was going to be dumb, but he's not.
This is scary.
He's great. I love those two so much.
Next, we have the Zuckerberg Manifesto.
Yes, the big article they just put out. I think this was written by Zuck. It doesn't feel AI generated. It is "The Future is for Everyone, the Path to a Positive AI Future." And it is a very long article detailing open source is super important. They're going to be open sourcing some models in the future. I think I saw some people saying that they're going to be open sourcing everything. I don't think that's true. The labs in the US government should work closely together according to them, and everyone should have the best capabilities and have their own personal super intelligences. It's a really interesting article. I actually really liked it.
This is very interesting to read. And having read a good bit of Zuck writing before, this definitely seems like it was him, and there isn't much like PR spin on it.
No.
There are layers that make this more interesting that are so in the weeds, I almost feel bad going into them. But like the LLM spend at Meta has been absurd. And just from like the anecdotes I've heard from friends there are many people who are spending more in like tokens per month than they are being paid by quite a bit. And they have actually slowed it down largely because they're using so much of the data generated by employees. They're scared that they'll, quote, accidentally distill a higher like end model from one of the major labs. They also have been weirdly aware of the fact that competing with Anthropic makes no sense for them, especially right now. And they have chosen to like use Anthropic models internally a lot for a lot of like the dev work they're doing there, but also to build these other models for different use cases. The first bullet point in the summary section here is, at Meta, we will focus our efforts on delivering personal superintelligence to billions of people and small businesses.
Yes.
The specific call out of billions of people and small businesses seems to imply that they are steering a different direction than Anthropic and OpenAI are. Even OpenAI just hit the line now where the majority of their revenue is from enterprises instead of just being from those personal subscriptions they've relied on historically. This is very much like Meta's bread and butter. They've always been a consumer business first and foremost. They do make their money selling advertisement to small businesses to be shown to those users. But over time, as their ability to target people has gotten worse, as Apple's gotten better at privacy stuff, their focus has been more and more on that consumer side again. This seems like they're leaning in more, which is cool.
And it's honestly, when I read that, that sounds to me like very similar to what SpaceX is saying right now. Like that is very similar to Grok, very similar to Cursor, which are now one and the same. And also to honestly, this sounds much more like what OpenAI is going for. Every time I talk to anyone at OpenAI, and when you just look at the patterns of what they're doing, their enterprise revenue is going up, but I think that's more of just an inevitability as the Anthropic models keep getting more restricted, keep getting more expensive. They are, from what I've heard, not the most pleasant enterprise partner to work with at all. And now that OpenAI models are going on to Bedrock, I think that a lot of those contracts that were like annual spend commitments that were made probably around Opus 4.5 with Anthropic, those will be coming up within the next 6 to 12 months or whatever. That will probably just inevitably shift towards OpenAI because you're going to get more, in a lot of ways, better models. At least for me personally, I think they're more useful day to day. They're easier to drive and steer. They also are a lot cheaper, a lot more efficient. Like, it makes sense that they're gaining enterprise.
You missed the most important piece. ZDR is available on OpenAI's best models. Zero data retention is not available on Fable. So if you are a company that can't share your data with Anthropic and OpenAI, your only option right now is OpenAI. So yeah, that's a pretty big deal. I am excited to see what happens once the Bedrock usage of OpenAI stabilizes a bit because it's still rough. I will say I am proud I called that one as hard as I did. That OpenAI is not equipped to make their model work on other architectures because they're an NVIDIA house through and through. They have not moved to Trainium very well.
No, that does not seem to be working at all. I haven't looked at the stats recently. It would be fun. I want to check on OpenRouter.
Do they even support 5.6 on Bedrock on OpenRouter? Last I checked, they didn't. Oh, they do now. It's more expensive than it is through OpenAI.
Holy shit.
And they don't report uptime yet.
Yeah.
Cache hit rate 0%.
Yeah, this looks bad.
It is slightly faster, but it's much less reliable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and still, like, if you look at the load balancing here, Azure is 30%, OpenAI is 61%. Azure, there's a split between Azure and Azure US, whatever that means. It's like 40% Azure, 60% OpenAI, then like nothing from Bedrock yet. So that rollout has not succeeded. It eventually will, I'm sure. Just there is such an incentive for them to make that work. Too much money on the table, but it'll take a bit.
Azure TPS is back to its usual randomly spiking to shit. I just checked my benchmark, so that's sad.
Azure.
Yeah, it is what it is. If you want to use OpenAI models, you have to use OpenAI's infra still for the most part. I hope that changes, because if you're using Anthropic models, Anthropic's infra is the worst infrastructure to use.
Unfortunately true. But no, the ZDR thing, I completely forgot about that. I think in this post, he mentioned that specifically, that they will have fully private versions of their models available, and those will be available obviously for enterprise, but I think they'll also be available for people like normal consumers as well, like a true ZDR fully private instance for yourself, which will be really cool.
Back to Zuck's notes here, though, because on the topic of being able to run with ZDR on your own infrastructure, his next call out is that open source is a positive and important force for empowering people. And as bullshit as many might call this out to be, Zuck's had a really good record with open source. The amount of stuff, like my channel would arguably not exist if it wasn't for open source for Meta. Like the amount that React and the ecosystem around it has impacted me in my life is hard to put into words. And they have maintained that very well. React Native is the type of thing that most companies absolutely would have kept private. Like the amount of engineering effort it took to build React Native is hard to fathom. And that they just gave out for free. Yeah,
they talked about the open source stuff a lot. The one thing, like, he did say that they will be open sourcing models going forward, but I don't think that's all models. There was no commitment in here that I saw of we will make all of our big frontier models fully open sourced. As dope as that would be, I would love to get a Kimi K3 level open weight model from a US company. That would be sick. I don't think we're going to get that, but they are going to make open weight models.
I said ChatGPT give me an estimation of how many engineering hours would it take to rebuild React Native. 500,000 to 1 million.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah, like hundreds of engineers have been working on React Native for a very long time. That's like God, I can't even fathom. Yeah, between 50 and 150 million dollars. And I would argue this is a low estimate, because I know the engineers who worked on this, and like they're some of the best in the world. It's like Meta has committed absurd amounts of money and energy and time to open sourcing things that should not have been open sourced, arguably, that like give them a like business economic disadvantage to have open sourced.
Yeah. I mean, is T3 code still a net benefit to have open source, you think?
It's important for it to be what it is.
Yeah.
It is also going to cost me a shitload of money and opportunity, but that we'll have a more in-depth T3 code episode in the near future, because I have a lot to say and I don't want to distract from the other fun things we have to talk about today.
Agreed.
Although, we hit the point where I'm no longer like splitting my time between T3 code and other apps, where like even like at its peak before, I found myself like half the time in Codex, half the time in T3 code. I've only opened Codex once in the past 2 weeks, and it was to turn on the new history feature.
I'm still more split than you are. I still use the Codex desktop app a ton. Part of that is because the devil you know type thing. I'm very used to it. I know all its quirks. And I also just like, there's a lot of the computer use stuff is useful. The automations for like the built-in browser, I've been using its built-in browser a lot. That whole system feels great, especially for the stuff I've been building right now.
If only there was an alternative that was open source, enabling you to add all the features that are missing.
Go back to the devil you know thing. I know that I could go do all of this, but I'm lazy. So someday I will get there.
This is how open source dies. It's laziness.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, last pieces on the Zuck thing are independent governance and oversight is important. General, like we need governance structures that aren't just people who work at the companies deciding on things. While Meta is a founder-controlled company, the CEOs of all frontier labs currently have extensive authority over model releases, so we encourage others to implement structures similar to this as well. Sounds fine there. And then a government policy is necessary to ensure a positive future call out. Yep, totally fair.
There is a lot more to that than just that headline, though. This was one of the things I read through this entire thing this morning. The reason why I wanted to talk about this and go in depth on this is because one of the interesting things they talked about is What do you think about giving the government early checkpoints of models that are unreleased? So instead of waiting for the model to get to like release candidate and then right before they put it public, then they go through the battery of reviews, what if you just, the second the training run finishes, you start giving it to the government and you collaborate directly with them?
If we think this will work, we're no better than the Europeans.
That was the one that I was a little more questioning on because they were talking, he was talking a lot about how, and we have felt this with, if you remember the 5.6 stuff, the Fable stuff, where we had it, then we didn't, and we took a long time to get it because the government had to review it. I'm pretty confident we're probably going through that right now. Like I would guess that from all of the stuff that they put out publicly, Astra is pretty close to being ready to go, OpenAI's next model, but it's definitely going through government security review stuff. And that is delaying its public release, even though OpenAI internally is using it like crazy. The only people who have it are the feds and OpenAI. So like cutting that cycle so that people can get the models as soon as humanly possible is a lot of the argument here, which I do think makes sense. But I have no idea how you implement this because he was talking about doing this in a way such that it's not a like a regulation thing or a strong process thing. It's just a like the government and the company work together and they come to a mutual agreement of, oh, this model is safe to release. We'll just quickly put this out. Or, oh, we need to go through a little more testing and we'll take a while to do that. And that is a very optimistic view of the world that I do not share.
I want to read between the lines a little on the things you just said for our audience members who don't pay as much attention. I do not have early access to Astra.
Yes.
Stop asking. I'm not shipping way faster all of a sudden because I have access to a new model. I'm doing all of that through Fable and a little bit of Sol. You can check the history and see it. I have no early access to anything interesting at all right now. I'm just building the way I can with the tools that I have. Nothing I have is special right now beyond T3 code, which is open source. So yeah, just wanted to get that one out there because people keep asking and I'm getting increasingly annoyed.
Yes.
I have no early access to anything. I wish I did right now. But yeah, so back to government intervention stuff. There is what people wish they had. There is what they think they need. And then there's what they actually need. And these are different things. And you give people different things based on what your objective is with them. A lot of the government's intervention isn't the government actually sincerely trying to prevent bad things from happening. A lot of it is their beliefs just being thrown out into the public and them wanting to feel important and involved in this race. What the government really needs to be doing is getting the country ready for these changes, getting like infrastructure ready, getting us back in the energy race where we're woefully behind other countries and like entire continents at this point. Like, the government should be unblocking us for this future, and that should be their primary role. So that's what they actually need. And what they need is the insights from industry leaders to help them do that. It's even called out in here that the government should be helping accelerate the ability to build infra, whether it's energy, data centers, or silicon itself.
Exactly.
That is absolutely something the government needs to be doing. And we need to be showing them like how to do. The government thinks they need systems to regulate these models and have a better way to roll them out that is more likely to be safe. They believe they need that for reasons that make sense. And my own AI security psychosis indicates that there is genuine reason for all of that. But then there is what they wish for, what they want. And what they want is to feel important. And a lot of what is being described by Zuck here leans into that. Giving people an early snapshot doesn't make it more or less likely the final version comes out safe. I've even fallen for this trap, but too, when we get access to early snapshots of models from major labs and we talk to them about the things that work and don't, they're not going to implement our feedback for that release. They will save that somewhere and then implement it for the next release. Like, I've seen so much of the stuff I and others complain about with 5.5 entirely eradicated in 5.6 with OpenAI models. But like, the early access they give us isn't because they want us to help steer the direction of that release. It's because they want us to feel important. They want us to be more informed. And then hopefully we can be more useful in the future to them. So it's more of a like self-serving thing almost to the labs to do that. I don't think it is valuable at all in the government's decision-making process. I simply think it is a way to make the government feel more involved.
I agree. But if you can make the government feel more involved, but also speed up the timelines, like basically getting them to giving them the token appreciation of, we are involving you, you get to see these things, we can talk to you about this, but also F off, let us actually do our job and release these things on time so that we don't have to sit here for 3 months preventing everyone from getting access to the new frontier. I think that would be quite nice to get. My fear, though, is just like, I mean, you remember what happened with the Fable stuff, where Fable found a exploit that wasn't really an exploit, and then that set off the whole chain of events where the model got taken offline. That was just pure incompetency. It wasn't, I don't think it was necessary. Maybe it was malice, maybe it wasn't, but regardless, they just screwed up and did something stupid and we all paid for it. This could potentially open the door to more of that, but also the way he's phrasing it is a lot of more of a mutual partnership and less hard guidelines and hard regulation. So I think you're right.
There's also like the one major advantage that OpenAI has with all of this, which is that Sam Altman is relatively good at kissing Trump's ass, which is an important skill to have developed as a AI frontier lab CEO, and one that Dario seems to be struggling a lot with.
I think he's outsourced it, which is good.
Finally.
That was so funny. You know, there are two ways you can look at this article from Zuck. One of which is it is purely self-serving, and the only reason why he's making all these points and advocating for this vision of the future is because he feels backed into a corner, because in the scaling world, OpenAI and Anthropic will just destroy them. He's not outscaling Anthropic. There's no universe in which that can happen. So he wants to do this more. Everyone has their own super intelligence, drive down the costs, make it more efficient, make it more accessible, that kind of thing. But you could also read it as like he's just genuinely wants to do this stuff. I think the actual read behind it doesn't really matter. What actually matters is what's being said here. And what's being said here is like, and this isn't like specific things they've said, but just kind of the feeling I have. You have the Anthropic vision, which is very much like, we are building God. We need to control this. It is dangerous. We need to have this go through all of these checks. You cannot have ZDR. We must be monitoring this. We are the only ones who can do this safely. We must protect you as this central authority, versus these other companies, which are trying to do a much more distributed, okay, everyone will have their own personal super intelligence. And by distributing that, it will just naturally work out to, it's fine. Like, people will inherently put the checks on each other and it will be okay. Which of those two are you feeling more of? Like, do you want the centralized safety from Anthropic? Or, because he talked a lot about model safety here. Like, you know, how do we check the massive concentration of control? Like, should Anthropic be the final arbiter of how we use these things? Like the alignment question. Should the models be aligned as they scale up to the Claude constitution? Or should they be aligned to what the end user wants them to do?
I think we should let the free market do its thing. Give us all the options. Like, I think back to the operating system wars. Like, we went from 1 to 2 to 10 to 30, back to 2, and now to 3.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it goes. If a company isn't doing the things that their customers want, then other options start to become more attractive and more successful. And I think that there is enough money going into the space right now and enough development happening outside that the risk of Anthropic being the only option is much lower than I would have been worried about in the past. I think a lot of this comes down to how good is Astra and how much longer can like XAI keep up with catching up. It's obviously not easy to do any of these things, but relatively speaking, it's a lot easier to catch up than it is to get a real lead right now. Because catching up gets to lean into all the work and the research and distillation you can do on the things the other labs have made. Like, making something 90% as good as Frontier is not that hard in comparison to making something 101% as good. Like, going slightly past where Frontier is 10 to 100 times more expensive than getting most of the way there. And that alone kind of guarantees a more flexible marketplace. Because if you're willing to take the hit, like, right now with computers, for example, there is no computer that is as battery efficient with as good of a screen and overall experience as a MacBook.
Yes.
The cost there is that you have to deal with macOS. I don't like macOS. I'm increasingly tired of the operating system on this computer to the point that I'm very excited for us to do an episode about Linux in the near future.
That'll be fun.
I have a lot of other computers that are very high end that are as expensive, if not more so, than this MacBook. I still default to the MacBook, even though I hate the software, because all the little things are slightly better.
Yes.
But the market allows me to choose something that is 90% of the way there with 90% as good of a keyboard and trackpad and screen and battery life and all those things. But with an operating system and ecosystem, I fully control.
Yes.
I always have that option. I have 4 computers in the other room that are that option. But I still have the MacBook on my desk right now while I'm filming.
Yeah.
And that's the reality I expect a lot of us to fall into, is like, the people who care the most would go with an option like what Anthropic did. The real world will take the one step below for the much more like reasonable place. Anthropic's like Apple. They're trying to be like Apple. There's a lot of overlap there.
Absolutely.
Is Anthropic like Apple in the Mac era, or is Anthropic like Apple in the iPhone era? Because a lot of people think that by channeling Steve Jobs, they can make the next iPhone. No, by channeling Steve Jobs, you're going to make the first Macintosh. And that's not the product that you want to make as a startup.
No, you do not.
I think Anthropic is much closer to the Macintosh than they are to the iPhone in terms of the way that they are building and innovating. Like they're going to make something that is objectively better by a meaningful amount, but not a huge amount for a lot of use cases.
Yeah.
I still default to Fable for this reason. I can get most of my work done in Sol. Fable just goes a little bit further and is a little bit smarter and a little more likely to write code that I actually want to merge.
Yeah.
That difference is enough for me right now, but that difference, again, as things keep getting more and more improved, eventually the general will hit where my bar is, and I stop caring and stop dealing with their bullshit. And I think that we're just going to end up in this back and forth in this loop indefinitely.
I think the catching up seems to be working really well, and it's working across a lot of companies too. I cannot believe that we have this many companies that are actually competitive. I remember when we started this podcast, it was the OpenAI and Anthropic show because no one was doing anything. And now we actually have like 5 new models to talk about, none of which are from OpenAI and Anthropic, and they're actually compelling.
To be fair, a lot of why we have more of other things to talk about is because the frontier labs can't really do shit right now. Like their hands are so tied.
Too.
Like the only thing Anthropic's announced in the past few weeks is a checkbox you can click when you're out on your limit to auto send the next message when your limit is restored.
Yeah.
And the watermarking shit. Like there's just nothing going on from the majors right now.
Yeah, I know Anthropic, they had that like earnings thing yesterday. That was, I don't know if that was a leak or official or what it was, but the whole Model 2 thing where they had this internal model that was benching better than Mythos on a bunch of things, especially like their recursive self-improvement index or whatever, that they are not planning to release publicly. It does kind of seem like they're definitely sitting on something huge. I'm sure they are. I know OpenAI has said publicly that they are. Like Astra is clearly something big that they have been sitting on for a while, and now we are just waiting to see what it ends up being. The question of catching up to me is, it seems like the like distillation stuff is mostly in the RL space, like just taking these other bigger models and then giving them lots of coding agent traces and different use cases, and then taking a fine enough base and creating a good model on top of that with an insane amount of RL. See Composer 2.5. That's all that was. That's a lot of what these other new models are. Like I was reading the blog post on what was it, GLM 5.3. It's the same base as GLM 5.2. They just have an absurd RL pipeline they built out with like real environments to train it on those real environments, and they can get tons of benefit out of that. That whole space will just keep converging and keep getting closer and closer to the frontier. The place where I think the frontier can explode beyond them, that I don't know how well it can be distilled, is in pre-training and scaling. I don't know how any of these other labs are able to pre-train as well as Anthropic can and scale up pre-training as well as Anthropic can, because no one has made a model as big as Fable. Maybe Astra is that big, but we don't even know if it's bigger yet. We don't know if it's just a better base or a new base. God only knows.
I still have battle scars from GPT 4.5. That model was so bad at everything, like other than writing and historical facts.
Exactly, yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. I am hopeful for Astra. In this era, I'm still stuck bullying people into stuff like this. I don't know if you saw this, but I successfully bullied Matt Pocock into removing all the M dashes from the grilling skill because his slop skill was conflicting with my unslop skill.
Yeah.
And if I used grill, I would just end up in fucking M dash hell.
Bleh. Isn't it only like 10 lines long or something?
No, the grill skill is a little longer.
Okay. There was that viral screenshot of it. Do you have the actual thing pulled up?
Okay, it's not that short, but it's pretty short. Yeah, it fits on one page easily enough. Looks so much better with all of the M dashes removed.
There's still remnants of it. Like each round the user answers reshapes the tree. I get it, and it does work quite well. I personally just have my own version of the grill me skill, which is 5 words I put at the end of all my prompts of ask me lots of questions in logical phases, and then it does the same thing. The last question I have for you on this, and this is kind of in some ways going to be related to what we talk about with DEFCON, but he talked a lot in this about the safety risks of these things and the different ways of solving those problems. Do you think that the upside of the freedom of putting these in everyone's hands, putting what are effectively weapons in everyone's hands, because they can get immense benefit to their lives and everything they do, but giving them that capability with less restriction, more open source, you could do a lot of crazy stuff with that. Is that freedom worth it compared to the centralized control of something like Anthropic, like the Fable safeguards?
I think there is the two sections of this. There's like safety for digital stuff like code and whatnot. And then there is everything else, like making weapons, making drugs, making nukes, all those types of things. My pay grade is not at the point where I can confidently speak about any of that. So I'm just going to talk about what I do, which is the code side.
Yes.
I've been thinking a lot about this. Very smart and connected people have been asking me the same question recently. So I've had more reasons to think about it than ever, especially after DEFCON.
Yeah.
The question I have is one of like, when is a piece of software actually secure? There will always be some bug, some exploit, some way to work around the software. But like, let's say there are hypothetically like 1,000 day zero, or like 0 days in the Linux kernel right now that could be used to pwn people who are running any version of Linux. Let's say the AI gets smarter and they patch 500 of those. So the number of them left has been cut in half.
Yeah.
Then they cut another 300 of them, and now there's only 200 left. Then they cut another 150, and now there's only 50 left.
Yeah.
They cut another 25, and now there's 25 left. Like, it'll never get to zero. There will always be some bug left, but at what point is all of software now secure enough thanks to these tools? The other angle here is one of software as it's written. In the early days of AI, I would absolutely agree that like software was getting less secure pretty quickly because people were slopping their way through shit.
Yeah, the Sonnet 3.5 code bases of the world.
I genuinely believe the average piece of software is more secure now than it was 5 years ago, because people who had no idea what they were doing are now using AI to code, and they're not leaving their Firebase public access key inside of their like app bundles that lets you write over other people's data and shit the way they used to. Like, so many of these like common failure cases that were used for these types of exploits are the models are smart enough to just never do that. So I think the average piece of software is absolutely getting more secure. The important pieces of software will hopefully get secure fast enough. The only real victim of these models being able to exploit things are devices and software on known old, known exploited versions, and the ability to reproduce like things that will take advantage of those vulnerabilities and chain them together to do nasty shit.
Yeah.
That is, in my opinion, like a short-term risk.
Yeah.
That's like similar to how you had to learn with email to like not trust the Nigerian prince. I think we're going to have to learn to update our shit.
Yeah.
And everyone needs to be making sure their stuff is on the latest version of the software that it can possibly run. And if you're still on some old Windows XP box, you got to treat that like the Nigerian prince email. You got to just stop using it, stop trusting it, and move on. This has always kind of been the case, but that is what's really going to accelerate. I don't think that like Linux will be pwned because of AI.
No.
I don't think that Windows 11 will be pwned because of AI. I don't think that like major companies will be too badly. Like there will be short-term in like moments like this, but it's going to be a short-term thing because as the AI gets good enough to find and exploit these things, it's also even better at patching them.
Yeah.
And the amount of exploits available for people to use is just going to keep going down. And the things that aren't patched are going to be the lower value things. So like local hospitals and shit are all going to get pwned like never before. That I don't really think you can stop at this point though. Like the open weight models can already do a lot of that type of thing.
Easily.
I don't know if I'm in like my own cope corner at this point, but I am pretty over it now. I think like software, like is there such a thing as secure enough is the question. And I think the answer is yes.
I generally agree. He had a quote in here, but if everyone has access to cybersecurity superintelligence, then all of our technical systems would become more secure than today, since the widely deployed superintelligence would help harden and update every system, which I agree. The scary part is exactly what you said, the hospitals and stuff like that. Like those are the most vulnerable targets, and they're the ones that very few people are thinking about because no one even really computes the fact that there are computers in a hospital. That's just not what you think about with a hospital, but they have very complex, important IT systems that are probably very, very vulnerable. And that does suck. But some of the stuff I've even seen just running DeepSeek V4 Flash on my 2 DGX Sparks in my home server, if you put that thing in an auto research loop and just send it after something, it can accomplish insane stuff. It might take a really long time. It's not the most efficient. It's not the most intelligent. But if it has a goal and it has a way of verifying if it did or didn't hit that goal, it can eventually crack it. We're already there. That for the cybersecurity stuff. Then for the bio and physical stuff, it was... he had some stuff in here. Also have no real idea of what the actual implications of all this are because I don't know much about bio. But the one constraint that does live on these things is the fact that they do require stuff to happen in the real world with physical things that have to be assembled in reality, not on a computer. So there are more ways that you can check and control those. Like I think he argued in here that there's probably not ever going to be a Mythos moment for bio, because even if you did have a moment with a model that was insanely good at bio stuff, if you handed me a model that could tell me exactly what compounds I needed to synthesize to create a bioweapon, I don't have the equipment or the expertise to assemble those things in the real world. And over time, we can just kind of control those very dangerous ingredients the same way we control stuff like uranium and that kind of thing. You can put more checks on these to where it's probably not as big of a deal, hopefully.
You've now convinced me to get the second Spark and try this. What's the cable I need? Is it this?
Let me get you the exact one I got. Yeah, like Mia AI Lab does a bunch of really cool stuff with this. And whenever there's like a new thing, like with Qwen 3.827b, has like an actual link to a run book for running the Qwen 3.827b SG Lang DGX Spark thing. And I will literally just copy paste this post into Codex and tell it to run this on my Sparks. And then once it's running with VLLM, get the URL set up on my Tailscale network, and then hook that up to my local Pi config on this machine so that I can use it. And then it works. It takes a few minutes, but I don't have to think about any of this anymore. It's really cool.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how I end up feeling about it. My thoughts on local models have been known for a while, but considering that the DGX Sparks are going for like $4,700 right now.
I bought mine at 44.
It's 10 grand now to get the setup that can run Flash.
Yes.
And that's compared to like the $200 a month subscriptions.
Not even worth it.
You get 50 months of sub for the price that you are paying for the stuff for worse models that parallelize worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's financial. Anybody who's saying like get local models to save money is stupid and shouldn't ever be trusted again. Nope. But if you're interested in doing it for fun, yeah, absolutely.
Doing it for fun, I agree. It is cool though, the fact that like 10 grand is an absurd amount for this and it is not worth it for real work. But the fact that we've gone from like it cost over 100 grand to run anything even remotely competent at the start of the year to where we can run like for 10 grand, you can run DeepSeek V4 Flash. You can have like, I've had it parallelized up to 5 threads at a time, each at like 30-ish TPS, feeling pretty good. You can get that for 10 grand in your own home server with a model that is better than the Frontier that we had in April. Like, it is really impressive. It's this. I'm hoping that over time, this cost curve will keep going down and we can get better and better local models on cheaper and cheaper hardware because it's working so far.
I think the incentives to keep hardware costs high are too great right now. And the incentive for the labs to make things that work well on hardware that's accessible to consumers is lower and lower by the day. I'm not sure this trend is going to continue as much as people hope. It will in like the cool hobbyist sense, but I don't think local is the future anymore. And I used to think it was obviously so, but just the direction compute's going in makes it pretty obviously not the case.
Entirely depends on model architectures and how much more efficient they can get with this stuff. Like they keep having new novel breakthroughs, and I think the incentives are aligned for these, not the US frontier labs to keep investing in this, but it is aligned for the Chinese labs to keep investing in this because they do not have the compute we have, and they care a lot about getting these things to be more efficient and easy to run. That's how stuff like speculative decoding came about. Keep having stuff like that over a long period of time, and there is a potential future where you could get it down to more reasonable hardware. I'd be shocked if it was like on an iPhone that was useful, but certainly like, I mean, I haven't tested it thoroughly, but Qwen 3.827b runs phenomenally on just a 5090, and that's another like tier down. That's like really good model for $5 grand.
The only labs that are still focusing on this, it feels like, are DeepSeek a bit with the Flash snapshots, but even that's like not computer friendly. Like that's, you need a shitload of RAM and 2 DGX Sparks for. Like you're not running that on a MacBook.
No, you're not. Well, there's nuance to this, but we'll get into that when we talk about those later.
And also like, obviously the Qwen series still occasionally does the smaller local models, but it seems like their focus is now on the Qwen 3.8 Max and the Max series.
It is. So but also DeepSeek and Qwen, their two local models, like the two that I think are the most interesting right now, are fundamentally different models. They are very, very different. So we'll talk about those differences later.
Cool. Well, before we can talk about those Chinese labs and models, we have to talk about GLM 5.3.
Yes. This one I think is actually really cool. I don't know if this was a reaction to the Hugging Face incident, but in their launch blog post, they focused really hard on the cyber capabilities. Like the headline of the blog post is Frontier Coding with Emergent Cyber Capabilities, and how they used like their whole RL pipeline to get this thing to be really good at cybersecurity stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting that they're leaning into this idea of like, yeah, fuck it, we'll just be the model that pwns things. Like the other labs have left this opportunity to them. It's similar to how like OpenAI's thing is like, yeah, I guess we'll just be the efficient, reasonable value option that resets your limits all the time.
Yep.
GLM and ZAI seem to be leaning that way too. Of like, oh, everybody else's stuff can't do security because it gets locked. What if we just make the models that can do all the security stuff instead?
Yeah, they have in their launch blog post the Cyber Gym, Exploit Bench, Exploit Gym, all prominently featured, and it is very clearly advertised that like you can go use this yourself. We are not going to stop you. Have fun. Like the Frontiers will show these things, but they'll be like, don't worry, we put these behind 25 different safeguards and we'll blow up your apartment if you ever try. I like this. I think that putting this out there for defenders is a good thing. The more I think about this, the more I really don't like the idea of having the best cyber capabilities fully locked down forever. Giving the governments and big companies a head start like they did with Fable and Mythos was a good thing. But now that this is getting a little bit more mature, I think that the defenders need this stuff now, and I'm glad they're making it.
And as I read this, I can't help but stare at the GDP val numbers. They are also state of the art at GDP val, similar to how Grok 4.6 was. I think that might actually end up being, in retrospect, the worst benchmark of all time.
Tell me about it. I have not
GDP
seen
val.
this.
It's the like bullshit. How do I even describe it? It's giving the model access to the browser to see how it can complete real world tasks. And the more I look at it, the more it smells like the equivalent of the old SWE bench.
GDP val measures artificial intelligence model performance on real world, economically viable knowledge work tasks rather than academic or synthetic exam questions. 1,300 specialized tasks, realism, yeah. So this is like a computer use type thing or an Excel type thing? Like what?
All in quotes, mostly browser-based stuff. But like one of the examples is you are the AV and in-ear monitor tech for a touring band, and you have to make a PDF for all of the information for how the layout's going to work for this given show for front of house and all of these details. Like make a PDF that visualizes the structure.
How is this graded? That sounds like a very subjective grade.
For each matchup, the two outputs are anonymized and an LLM judge picks a winner. Those blind pairwise results are aggregated into an ELO rating per model.
I think most benchmarks that have LLM as a judge are kind of bullshit. Having done a couple of these custom myself, they are mostly nonsense.
Yep, I think I'm just going to ignore GDP val going forward. It's just dumb.
Yep.
But the hacking performance for this model, the cyber capability stuff is very cool. And like actually introduce, like they call out in the blog post here that as part of their post training, they introduce vulnerability discovery data and environments into the training mix.
Yeah.
They are explicitly trying to train it to do this, whereas Anthropic is actively trying to do the opposite, trying to train the model to be worse at security stuff.
Yep.
It's interesting to see the gap here. And the idea that you have to use like the super expensive high-end frontier models for your day-to-day work, but as soon as you go into security stuff, you're getting this like cheap, sketchy Chinese shit is very entertaining.
It's hilarious. The section at the bottom where they talk about their slime, which is their long horizon RL scaling like environment thing, all the crazy stuff they did in there, like actually simulating, not even just simulating, like giving it real environments to play in instead of just fake scenarios or whatever, seems to be doing wonders for their RL capabilities.
Someone built a self-learning and retraining OpenClaw where it personalizes the model and they're using slime to back it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this seems pretty sweet. I actually want to screw around with this later. This is my favorite thing to do with the local models is I hinted at this in the past. I didn't end up going all that many places other than it was kind of neat in a demo, but I was having my Codex instance basically fine tune one of the really small models on Svelte code to try and get it to be able to write competent modern Svelte components. It kind of got there. It kind of didn't get there. Like it got to the point where like the things it would output went from complete nonsense to uncanny valley nonsense. So like it was the general shape of correct, but not all that useful. I would love to see what these RL type workloads look like on 2DGX Sparks and maybe like 100B param model, because 8B is way too small. 100 maybe there's something cool there.
I still love your Opus 5 at home arc.
Oh yeah,
I train your own dumb distilled model.
Yeah. When I do it, I get nothing, and when Anthropic does it, they make billions. What the
Yeah, I don't think they're going to make billions off of Opus 5, let's be real.
Yeah, they probably have, just because of like...
It is their best model that has ZDR, so there are a lot of companies that like are using that for everything, which is gross. But
I know a lot of people who are using it, and it surprises me every time.
It's the best benching model.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if this was intentional or not, if they just like wrote this ahead of time, but they included Opus 4.8 in the 5.3 announcement, and they did not include Opus 5 in the 5.3 announcement.
This happens a lot, and it's usually because they like wrote it ahead. I happen to have reasons to believe that the 5.3 release was planned to be a little bit earlier than it ended up being. But yeah, it is what it is. I think that the benches from Opus 5 are also useless enough that I understand why people would choose to ignore it in their announcements. Grok 4.6 made the same mistake or like decision here as well, for what it's worth.
I honestly, like, it doesn't bother me. I just think it's funny because I think that model is dumb.
Next, we have DeepSeek before Qwen. I feel like we can blast through Qwen a lot faster, and it's also more newsy because like there's more going on there this week. I think Qwen 3.8 Max looks really promising, but I haven't heard about anyone using it for anything, so hard for me to know.
That's the story of Qwen.
Yeah.
It is, the Qwen 3 Max looks pretty compelling. It is going to be open weight, yeah. So the open weights of Qwen 3.8 Max will be released. And this is kind of the problem with a lot of these Chinese models right now, too. Like, I haven't actually tried GLM 5.3 for anything because I'm just not at the point where I'm comfortable putting my data through and logging into a Chinese server. Like, I just don't want to do it. I'm pretty chill about data stuff. I'm not a huge privacy guy or anything, but like, there are lines, and the line is the Pacific Ocean. I just want to keep it in the US. So as soon as this is put on open weight, I will try it a lot on US based hosts. Same thing with Qwen 3.8.
Did you see Anthropic added a checkbox you can check to make sure that your model routing is US based and it increases prices by 10%?
Really?
Yep. So even Anthropic is paying data centers offshore now. So
are you? I hate what that implies. I hate that implies some of my requests are getting routed to Europe.
Yep.
I love that we are...
Or even better, Canada.
I'm fine with Canada. I'm fine with Europe, too. I just don't want to make that round trip. That's just stupid. That sucks.
Well, since you have to round trip anyways on Anthropic models, and they're so slow to like recover the cache because they're not like maintaining a persistent server connection, like it's already going to be pretty bad.
I never even notice it because I have not sat and watched an Anthropic model work in forever.
Yeah, they're not very fast. Yeah, I don't fully agree with the like not ever using them when they're hosted in China thing, simply because like a lot of my work's currently open source anyways. I don't really give a fuck. Like whatever, I'm just going to use it. I was also using Muse Spark on the contributor tier where they're explicitly allowed to keep the data and train and do whatever they want with it. It's like whatever, fuck it. It's all just it's open source data anyway. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, open source stuff, it really doesn't bother me. It's kind of a nuisance as part of it, and I just like, I don't know. It's not particularly rational. I just don't want to do it. But I am happy to run them locally, and I have just finally got Qwen 3.8 loaded, so I can show you that, because I think that is the thing that's interesting to talk about with this Qwen 3.8 release.
The 27 bill or the max release?
27B.
Okay.
The max one is like, this could be a cool, compelling frontier thing when this releases, but time will tell. I haven't used any of the big Qwen models before, and I don't know anyone else who has either. I do know a lot of people who have used Qwen 3.7 27B. That was their last really good local one. That is the one that kind of got me to start playing with the local models, because I could run it on my 5090 and it could run competently within a coding agent harness at 27B params is really impressive. Same thing seems to be happening here with Qwen 3.8. What was interesting is when I first tried to run this thing on my Sparks, you would inherently think, okay, so my two Sparks have 250 something gigs of RAM shared between the two of them, versus my 5090 only has 32 gigs of RAM. So I should just put it on the bigger rig and it'll be better there. But it's not. I was getting like 10 TPS right out of the box running it on the Sparks. On the 5090, you can get well over 100 TPS if you're running it there, because Qwen 3.8 is a very, and same with 3.7, they're very dense models. All the parameters are always loaded. It's running through the whole thing. DeepSeek is a much less dense model. It's a big mixture of experts thing, which only has like 8B. I think only like 8B are active at a time of the 100-something B params in the model. And as a result, it runs really, really well on the Sparks. Even though they are slower, their memory bandwidth is worse, and you do have to make that jump over the network cable. I think it's 200 something. It's either GIB or GB. I think it's GIB, so it's not actually 200 gigabytes. But regardless, it's a lot slower. But even though it is slower on the memory, it nets out to being a much faster model because much less has to be active.
Yeah, to simplify how this is explained a bit, imagine a like mailroom. And there's one mailroom that has a really, really fast person in it. They can run to and from anything in the room really fast, but the room only has 100 boxes in it that they can go to and from. There's another person, and this person is slightly slower, and their main office has almost nothing in it. It only has like 30 things in it. But if they walk out the door and go to one of 2 different rooms back behind, those 2 rooms have thousands of boxes in them.
Yeah.
So if they have to get something from the immediate room they're in, it'll be a little slower than the much faster person in the room that has more stuff. But as soon as you need more than 100 boxes, the person who's in that room has to walk really far to go find the thing in the different box. Like they have to leave the building, go somewhere else and get it from the other building and come back. With the Sparks, there's almost nothing in that first room, but there's 2 relatively easy to get to rooms that have way more space, but the person walking between them all is a bit slower.
Yes.
So there's the 2 aspects that matter, or I guess 3 aspects. There's how much data can you hold, how far away is that data, and how fast can you walk effectively.
Yeah.
And with the Qwen 27 bill models, they architected it so that it expects everything to be in that room. So all that matters is how fast can the person go from box to box. With the DeepSeek models, they architected it so you can have different rooms effectively for the different things that you're working with at any given time, which means that a much faster person is only beneficial if they have the ability to reach everything.
Yeah.
So the Sparks using that makes a lot more sense. This is also why VRAM is so important. It's if you have way more VRAM, you can hold way more, and you can justify a slower person walking from thing to thing. But if you want both, if you want a lot of VRAM because you want a lot of boxes, and you want a really fast chip because you want to be able to traverse that data really fast, you're stuck paying massive enterprise costs to NVIDIA almost exclusively in order to get that. And you got to choose now as a consumer, if you're trying to do local models, do you want a chip that's as fast as NVIDIA's highest end stuff or near it, but so limited on VRAM that you can only run like 27 to 80 bill per AM models? Or do you want something that can hold way bigger models, but is way, way slower? Because those are your only options now as a consumer, and both are in the 5 to 20 grand range.
That's actually a really good way of putting it. That is the big difference. And the different models fit different architectures better, which is why like I'm actually getting use out of my 5090 and out of the Sparks. It's quite cool.
NVIDIA's wedge is that you can't get RAM and a good chip at the same time. To the point where now, like, there are services. I just saw one that's in the US, forgot the name of it. Wendell did a video on it, where you can send in a 4090 and get it swapped to have 48 gigs of VRAM. And it's like it's $800 or so to do it. So it's one of the cheapest ways to get a greater than 32 gig card that's relatively high end.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the 4090 is equivalent performance to like, I believe, an A100. So
okay, yeah, that's not bad at all. I know because the RTX 6000s I think have that problem as well, because I think they're slower than the 5090s, right?
Slightly.
It's very
but
slightly.
They're also a shitload of money right now.
Yeah, they're really, I think they're just getting worse. I looked at them a while ago and it was like, the cheapest I saw was $8.5 grand or something.
Yeah, they're going for 15 now.
Jeez.
Yeah, the price skyrocketed recently. I was so close to buying 1 or 2 of them just to play with, and I now regret doing that or not doing that. Again, if you have any compute purchases you want to make, just make them. Prices are not going down anytime soon.
No, they're just not.
Yeah, on the rare occasions I see a decent like 4 terabyte NVMe SSD for under $450, I just buy it now on instinct because like this sucks. I hate consumer hardware prices right now. It's real bad.
These are both very cool models. The Qwen one seems compelling. I will run it through more like actual testing to see how well it can work in the real world. I just did a thing to see how many subagents it can handle at once, and this is running on my Sparks. I had it spawn 4 subagents of itself to just see like what the tokens per second would end up being. It cratered the TPS when I first started it because it had to like load everything into new instances. But now that they're up and running again, it seems like they're running around. The TPS does seem to be pretty bad. Yeah, that one seems frozen. Oh no, okay. So this is one of the 4 instances. This is probably something around like 20 TPS. So 4 of this model running at the same time, each at 20 to 30 TPS is pretty cool.
And that's on your Sparks, right?
Mm-hmm. It's on the Sparks.
I don't think you should be throwing Qwen models on Sparks, and I don't think you should be throwing DeepSeek models on NVIDIA chips unless it's the Spark. Yeah, it's weird and annoying and dumb that all of this matters, and I suspect it won't in the not too distant future.
Probably not.
I'm going to keep doing all my work on subscriptions, and I suspect that
Oh yeah, of course. This is purely I think this stuff is cool, so I want to play with it type thing. Yeah. And also, even outside everything we have talked about with the problems with local models, the other humongous problem with this is these things are pretty hard to understand and work with. Like, they're very temperamental. VLLM is weird. It's easily breaks. It's hard to orchestrate this stuff. It's hard to save this stuff. You have to suddenly deal with like loading the model and what model is loaded. And if I have one model loaded on my Sparks, now that this is loaded and running, I can't suddenly spin up a new DeepSeek thread and have that running on my Sparks as well. It's just not possible.
I'm just concerned that there's a lot more people that need to know what QSFP is. Like, there's so many of these weird networking things that I've been a nerd about forever that like consumers should never have to care about. Yeah. And now they do to an extent. So I wish them luck. It should be fun.
It's weird stuff.
Any other thoughts on Qwen 3.8 or DeepSeek v4?
Only other thing on DeepSeek v4 is that it is a really impressive model. I would argue probably in some ways more impressive than Qwen 3.8. It is super good at running for very long periods of time. It runs and harnesses really well, and it also will do whatever you want it to. I was playing with this when I was on vacation up visiting family. I was up at my uncle's lake house. I was just kind of curious what his network setup was. Like, I just like, that'd be fun. So I just sent DeepSeek on a scavenger hunt to go play with its network and see what it could find and get me full readouts of everything. And it happily did it. It just did exactly what I wanted it to. And I've seen a lot of other people do some pretty crazy stuff of like reverse engineering apps and getting into things just by putting DeepSeek into, I think it was Carpathy made that like auto research loop thing. It runs really well in that.
My only other thought with DeepSeek is they are now competing with OpenAI for worst branding and naming by far.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
DeepSeek V3 was the sleeper hit, but R1 is what got them attention. Mm-hmm. Not calling all their next models like after R1, since they're all reasoning anyways, like not calling them R2, R3, but instead like doing V4 and going back to the naming of the models nobody cared about. In and of itself, already very stupid.
Yep.
Like they should have called this series R2. They just should have. Like R1 had such a crazy sentiment that like they should have leaned into that.
I agree, but I'm more okay with that compared to what I think you're about to get into.
Yes. They had a preview version of both Flash and Pro earlier this year. The things that just came out are new snapshots that are labeled, respectively, DeepSeek-V4-Flash-0731 and DeepSeek-V4-Pro-0813.
Yeah, and you need to be very careful, like even on OpenRouter, you need to make sure you're getting the 0731 version of V4 Flash, not the preview version or the other versions. Otherwise, those are not very good. But the 0731, that's the really good one.
The gap here is big enough they could have justified a V5. Not doing V4.1 at the very least for these is almost insulting. It's very... DeepSeek is a lab. They of all of the labs, DeepSeek is the one that has the least understanding of product and consumers and how people perceive these things. Yep. Like by far. Remember the Sonnet 3.5 days where like there was 3 versions of Sonnet 3.5?
Oh yeah.
And then they just skipped to 3.7 for the next release because they realized how
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I'm glad. Well, they're going through the growing pains. Hopefully they figure it out the way Anthropic did, but time will tell.
How many versions of 4.0 were there?
Oh, that one also had a ton. It's funny how that's repeating.
They had a GPT-4o 2024-0513, GPT-4o 2024-0806, and GPT-4o 2024-1120.
Yeah, I'm glad you don't have to specify latest every time you put in an OpenAI model slug anymore. That was so stupid. It is. There was one other thing I saw from DeepSeek. Did you see their new harness thing?
I saw it. I don't know anything about it.
I've looked at it a little bit. I'm going to try it more later because I want to run it with my Sparks. But the one thing that I was shocked by, you remember how horrifically awful DeepSeek's web app and all that stuff was and why you made T3 Chat? This is the new site for their harness. It's actually a very nice looking site. I don't know how good the harness is. I haven't tried any of that, but their web design has really improved.
Is the harness a desktop app or a CLI or what?
It's a web app.
Oh, huh.
It's like you do this web and then it boots up like a web portal similar to T3 code.
Huh.
Yeah.
They learned the right lessons from us. That's cool.
They did, yeah. Yeah, this looks pretty impressive. I want to play with this more later.
Yeah, I'll do the same. I think I still have a DeepSeek sub somewhere, so.
Yeah, go find that.
Last thing before we can nerd out about DEFCON is Grok 4.6 and Grokbot.
Oh, yes. God, it's a beautiful thing watching now SpaceXAI actually be competitive with the big two labs. I'm so glad that we are no longer in this duopoly. They are not there yet. They're definitely behind. And I would guess that they are more behind than it looks like they are, because obviously the big boys from the big two are under lock and government key. But still, Grok 4.6 was overall an improvement. There are some issues with it, which I think we were talking about that yesterday, the day before. It's not perfect. Grokbot is really, really cool. I really like it.
I had early access and it just outright didn't work for me, so I haven't bothered trying it again since. So I'm happy to see people liking it so much, because there was a lot directionally there I liked. I don't know how much has ended up in the final version, but what I saw was like, it was trying really hard to look like iMessage and have your bots feel like people, so to speak, in like threads.
That stuck.
It did. Okay. Yeah. This looks pretty much identical to what I was trying to test and had fail when I tried. I will give this a go. I do think we need better interfaces for like agents working on like recurring real life tasks with access to your computer and whatnot. I've been saying for a bit now, and I covered this in my AIE talk, that we're in that weird, uncanny, like skeuomorphic era where when the iPhone needed to convince people that you could use the iPhone instead of a physical notepad or a physical calendar or a physical book, they had to make all of the apps look and feel like those physical products that already existed. Where like the book app on iOS up until iOS 7 had pages with animations where they would physically turn and you look at the books on a bookshelf. They had to do that because they had to teach people that these things work and act and replace the thing that they're already used to.
Yep.
I think a lot of the agent UX we're going to be seeing is going to be similar. And this is another case of that, where like Claude Code let us use agents where we were used to as developers in our terminal. And that ended up being a huge moment for a lot of devs to start using them more. I think this is a thing that looks like iMessage is going to be huge. We already had the era of doing it through iMessage with all those services like Poke and whatnot. Grokbot is the acceptance that iMessage hacks are not a scalable solution. We just need to make it look like iMessage.
Yeah, I fully agree. I can't show this because like obviously that's been one of my annoyances with this, is because I really want to talk about and show this in videos, but I really can't because it's all very personal, private stuff. It's like, you know, email, Google Drive, deals, stuff like that. But you can see here, like I have it set up so that the messages that come in look just like text messages. They have a really good plugin system to where you can hook up Gmail, Google Calendar. All of the things that you would probably want to have are available for this. And on the side, they have this routine section. So I have this routine set up so that every weekday at 8 a.m., it will send me a breakdown of my current like status of all of the brand deals and stuff we're currently working on. I get this. It pulled it from multiple different Gmail inboxes, automatically did it. The mobile app is really, really nice. So I just get a notification, kind of like a text message in the morning. I can go to it, see the thing. If it needs to work with a computer, they have the sandbox built into it. And all of this is organized within like one agent that's for the deal flow stuff. Then I have another one that is like watching all of my Git repos, and that has GitHub context and routines for watching for PRs and issues on my open source stuff. Then I have like a to-dos one, email manager one, schedule manager one. I really like this breakdown.
Does it let you pick models or anything? Like what is the level?
No, that's a weird one. This is clearly designed for everyone to use. They took as many of the buttons out of it as possible. Like if you put this next to the Cursor desktop app, because I think these two were kind of developed in parallel because they're very similar in a lot of ways. All of the fancy dev stuff that we use every day is gone. There's no model picker. There's no reasoning toggles, nothing.
There's no world you're going to convince me they're trying to make this consumer friendly when this is the get started, where like the first call to action on the get started page is create API key. And then this weird meet Grok 4.6 like orange button that doesn't bring me where I want. I have to scroll and click this one like understated open the Grokbot access page and choose the download for your computer.
No, that's Google SEO screwing up. Because yeah, when you search it, the first thing that comes up is the docs page, which it should not be. The first thing that should come up is this page, which is XAI/bot. This is the real page. And this is a much more normal looking page. And you can just download from macOS here. And the onboarding is very like normal user friendly. You can auth it with, I think, your cursor sub, or I think it's just your cursor sub right now because they haven't fully integrated those two yet. I'm not, but like compared to some of the things I've dealt with, this is better than most. The bar is pretty low for something that's even somewhat accessible at this point.
Team members require premium seats to use Grok bot, $40 a month.
That's just because the cursor accounts are on a team plan. I just ejected out of the team plan and I set up a new account on my work email for my company, and I'm just paying for the cursor sub on that instead, not yours. Because for yours, it's screwed up. Have fun with that.
I will try this another time.
Yeah.
Really smooth onboarding.
Normal users would not run into that because they would not have cursor
users
team.
Wouldn't have cursor subs. I just want to use my XAI sub.
You either can or you will be able to soon. I don't know exactly how that works. Actually, no. Now that I'm looking at the pricing right now, this is not normie pricing. Never mind.
$200 a month.
It requires either Cursor Ultra or Super Grok Heavy, or if you're on a Cursor team plan, the premium seats feature. So like all of this adds up to, this is not going to be there for normal end users right now. But I do think the form factor eventually could make a lot more sense for end users. Like you had the coding agents, then OpenClaw and Hermes really kind of made the first personal assistant-y workflow thing feel good. This kind of feels like the next step of that.
You're not actually paying $200 a month for Grokbot right now, are you?
No, God, no. It's Cursor. Because I do actually use Cursor. So I am paying for Cursor, but I am not paying for Super Grok Heavy. No. I don't quite know what the point of that is, because why would you pay the $300 a month for Super Grok Heavy when you could pay $200 a month for Cursor Ultra and get more models and a better harness?
It's because the Super Grok tier already exists because they had that Grok Heavy weird era with the Grok 4 release, and people were paying so they could be, it was just the only way to use that model for a while.
Yeah.
They probably just kept that around because they already had the tier and just wanted to leave it there.
I would bet money that within a month or two, these will all be merged into one thing. I'm sure.
I don't think the Team 1 will, but otherwise, yes.
Yeah, Team 1, rip, but the normals.
So what about the other thing SpaceXAI released? A rocket. I mean Grok 4.6.
Oh, yeah.
Very confusing that the same company provided us internet on our flight back from DEFCON is making Cursor and that whole Cursor ecosystem. Yeah. They've now created Grokbot, and they put out Grok 4.6.
They did. It is a good model. It is not a daily driver. It is not going to replace, I don't see a world where I would ever really reach for Grok over GPT 5.6 Sol. I think it's a better model in every way, but it's such a step in the right direction that I'm very excited for what comes after it.
Mm-hmm. I had the hot take in my video that for my use cases, 4.6 is a downgrade over 4.5 because they made it smarter, but they made it smarter by making it reason for longer.
Yes.
And I don't want that because I liked Grok 4.5 being relatively token efficient and fast. And it was a really good combo. Now that it's less token efficient, it's less fast, which kills one of the biggest benefits I had using it. It's also less cheap because when it does way more output tokens, it costs more. It costs almost 3 times more on a bunch of tasks compared to Grok 4.5.
Yeah, we were looking at this on Deep SWE yesterday, and I kind of felt this when I was running it, but I was doing it more in the background, so I didn't quite notice. But when I went back and looked at it, if you look at the cost graph, like I have, I can send this to Faze so we can pull it up. If you have GPT 5.6 Sol over here, it wins on, it's the better model. It gets the highest score at max. But when you look at Grok 4.6, its medium reasoning score ends up being $3.45 per task, which is the same exact price as GPT 5.6 Sol on high reasoning for a better score on that task. And then when you get into output tokens, it's even worse. Like Grok 4.5 high was 36K tokens. Grok 4.6 medium is 50K tokens. And then the agent steps is also really bad. 5.6 Sol on max does fewer agent steps per average steps per task than Grok 4.6 medium does.
Yep.
It's bad.
Yep. So this model will not be meaningfully faster unless you're asking things that don't require reasoning at all. And I'm increasingly tired of people imagining that the world is one where the prompts users and their moms are sending to ChatGPT is where the cost savings occurs.
Hello.
I have done more inference than every grandma in the country combined in a week compared to their yearly usage.
Yeah.
Just from like a few prompts, because the number of tokens you generate when you send off a long running goal is the equivalent of thousands of prompts that consumers make.
Yeah.
So like if you're thinking about this in terms of how fast can it respond to like, am I sick? Here's a picture of my rash, and not like add this feature to my project. Yeah, Grok 4.6 will be slightly faster at like looking things up on Twitter, like 20% faster maybe. But in real world work, it will be meaningfully slower now, which kind of sucks.
Honestly, I don't even think it would be faster in that case, because if you run 5.6 Sol on low reasoning, which is still quite good, the agent steps are 23.
This is all code though. Like if you're asking it non-code things where it doesn't need to do any tool calls.
Yeah, it is like, I guess if there's 0 tool calls involved, yeah. But at that point, the cost is so low compared to agent stuff that it's kind of a wash between the two. It's like a 1 or 2 penny difference. And I would just rather have the better base model of GPT 5.6 at that point.
Yep.
Like I would...
I'm fully with you here. I'm trying to steel man because I got a lot of shit from the Gemini defenders because I was trying to explain that like in every single measurable way, it was, I think Gemini Flash 3.6 is worse than 5.6 Sol lower medium.
Yeah.
Because it's higher TPS, which sounds faster, but it also takes 6x plus the tokens to do shit.
I pressed a funny button I blew up the graph. I was looking at like a kind of reasonable graph. You got way over on the right here, GPT 5.6 Sol, and this is the agent steps per task graph. 5.6 Sol is the lowest steps per task. Then you have the Grok models in the middle. Then way over on the left, well over 100 steps per task, is Gemini 3.7 Flash with the dumbest looking curve I have ever seen. Low reasoning does 130 steps, medium does 117, high does 125.
Yeah, so it's like Z'd out. God.
What are they baking into this thing?
While we were recording this episode, a fun beef started that we feel it is important to cover.
Yeah.
A reporter named Gavin Baker was recently on the All In podcast and dropped some alleged quotes from things being said internally at Anthropic, including things along the lines of Anthropic believing that they might become the only private company in the world. There's been a lot of pushback on this particular take, the statement that Dario ever said anything like this. I'm sure Dario absolutely said something along those lines. That's how this happens. It was probably as a response to a question that led there. It's probably not as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. But Anthropic's internal confidence, borderline arrogance, and elitism is a real thing. The cult-like attitude internally is this one particular quote may not have been accurate, and a lot of Anthropic employees are coming out saying that this is stupid. Yeah. You never said that. What the fuck?
But the vibe is there. Like, if you spend any time around that company, like the vibe is there.
Yeah, like
this is not made up.
They might not believe this specific thing, but they feel this type of direction.
Absolutely.
For sure. Sholto, who is one of the RL leads at Anthropic, came out very upset about this, pushing back on it, and specifically quotes some Dario essays saying that Dario is actually quite worried about a world where the AI creators are the only companies that have this type of power and control, and that he's trying to steer us away from it. Gavin replied very, very professionally here, did a great job of like turning this into a friendly back and forth, even though Sholto was being a bit of a dick here. I think he did a very good job with his response, specifically calling out the different ways we can address the risks. He says that, as he discussed on the All In podcast, if one agrees that AI might be dangerous, there are two ways to address this potential risk. Either you concentrate it in the hands of a chosen few companies and politicians via regulation, or you can distribute it widely. Essentially boils down to whether one believes AI is too dangerous to concentrate or if it's too dangerous to distribute. Those are the two edges, and he quotes Zuckerberg saying, the notion that AI is so dangerous that the only safe path is an extreme concentration of power seems inherently problematic. Historically, hoping that an absolute power will benevolently provide for humanity if sufficiently enlightened has not led to safe or positive outcomes. Yep. Mm-hmm. Very good quote to drop in here. Mm-hmm. He also then calls out that Dario has kind of lost the argument, leaning in that like centralized direction, because now we have companies like Hugging Face that are stuck relying on open source models in order to defend from things happening from these regulated private developments.
Yep. It is already starting.
He also calls out that Dario's messaging has been massively helpful to efforts to ban data centers in America. Generally, that Dario's like AI is going to ruin everything and hack everything message is damaging to how the public sees AI, which I absolutely agree on. He is an important CEO, and his public statements are, at this point, decreasing the odds of the future that we all want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is true, especially like if you go into Dario's response here, he mentions, where was it? There was a section where he was talking about how he had his like Machines of Loving Grace essay or whatever, where he talked about the benefits of this technology. He did talk about benefits in there. I read the whole thing. But every single benefit was discussed with so many caveats to where it was very hard to take it as a positive. It was like, yeah, we could cure cancer, but also here's 5 paragraphs about how it could kill all of us and how you should be very, very scared. Like the tone is very clearly in one direction.
Dario's response is like 2 giant sections that like fill the like giant character limits on Twitter premium stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to ignore the second part for now because I have a lot to say about that, but just the first part I'm going to focus on, which is him trying to engage on the back and forth on the regulation from Gavin. He opens saying that he's thankful for Gavin for doing an especially thoughtful exchange here. He's not a Twitter guy, but he decided to come out and talk just because Gavin's doing this well.
Yep.
He has a section first on regulation. He says that the binary between concentrating in the hands of a chosen few companies and politicians or distributing it widely is a false choice. I know that there's a sort of Silicon Valley shorthand where regulation equals regulatory capture equals concentration of power, but I've always found that to be an overly simplified picture of the world. Many people outside of the bubble think of regulation as something that constrains corporate power and benefits ordinary people. I don't necessarily agree with that perspective either. Rather, I think it's complicated and really depends on what the regulation consists of. But in particular, I think that those in the regulation is a capture and concentration of power frame often underrate the decentralizing power of objective and fair institutional process. He analogizes this to formal court systems feeling stuffy and elitist, but they do a better job of defending rights. What he's actually trying to say here is that compute is going to be an inherently concentration of power thing because compute is getting more expensive, not less, and availability is going down, not up. So we're now going to be in a position where instead of the 2 labs having access to these technologies, we're going to end up with like whatever 5 players have compute. And he doesn't think that is meaningfully better.
Yeah, and also the weights and all that stuff. Yeah. It is interesting that he uses like courts as an example here because courts are not, I don't think it's an equivalent thing here because courts have checks on them. The whole point of like the US government is that there are checks on different forms of power, imperfect as they are. Those checks do exist and they are a very heavily contributing factor to the individual rights being protected.
Anthropic has checks. They have multiple employees.
Yeah, oh, true.
They check each other.
Yeah.
Oh, and they have Claude too. They can ask Claude.
That's true. Claude can be asked, and Dario can ask his sister.
You know, I bet if the founding fathers had Claude, there wouldn't be all of these checks and balances. They would just be Claude's imbalances.
That's true. God, isn't it a shame that in like when they were writing the Constitution, they didn't have the Claude Constitution? Yeah, what? We could have had the Claude-stitution.
Yeah.
What a shame.
We should have Claude rewrite the Constitution.
Oh, I bet it'd be so much better. It'd be much more aligned with the...
Do we let Grok make a few amendments, though?
Claude writes the Constitution, and then Grok writes the Bill of Rights. I would love to see Grok's Bill of Rights. That Fourth Amendment would definitely be protected by Grok. It would definitely make sure that one was in there.
The First Amendment would just be about racist speech.
Racist
explicitly
speech?
Protecting racism.
Yeah. And unfathomable levels of gooning. Those are the only 2 things that are protected. Everything else is not okay.
Yeah. So again, the first section of Dario's response was about the regulation side and how he doesn't like this binary, like it's either super regulated or entirely open. He thinks that the reality is somewhere in between. I get why he feels this way. The reason he feels this way is he thinks the thing he is doing isn't the super concentrated, like these few have it, but it is. And he doesn't realize that the binary we're talking about is the side they're on versus where everyone else is.
Yeah.
He thinks that he's in the middle of the 2 perspectives and that we're going to extreme, but he's just wrong. We see this way for a reason. It's because it's what it is.
And it's even funnier that he then says, like, he has another paragraph after this where he talks about specific regulations and stuff that they have supported or they're at least ambivalent on. And in the Pacing of the Frontier piece, where was it? Here. He basically said that the current regulations, this hurts the business interests of the frontier labs and helps challengers, including open weights. So he's arguing that all of these regulations and like the models being slow to roll out and all this stuff is going to help the competition and hurt them. But the thing he's leaving out of this is that by not releasing these models, you are hurting everyone else. The fact that OpenAI and Anthropic have Fable, whatever the hell it ends up being, in Astra, and we don't, hurts the rest of the world but doesn't hurt them. They're not actually getting hurt by this. Their internal development is not getting slowed down by these regulations. They still have their Model 2 thing or whatever that is. I'm sure internally they're not using the same mythos we are. They're using something bigger and better and newer. And now all they're doing with these regulations is just not giving them to the rest of the world. That's it.
Yep. They built themselves a much more powerful tool and they are now refusing to sell it. It'll be interesting to see like how is the catch-up effect hurt by the major models like not even being out. Because there was obviously like hide the reasoning trace to make it harder to RL against it.
Yep.
Now there is hide the model entirely. Where will the impact there be and like how much will that hurt future development of external stuff? Interesting to know, and we'll see in the future. My
personal theory on that is I actually think like I think distillation definitely has a cap to it. I mean, we talked about this earlier. I think the reason why like GLM 5.3 is really catching up, I don't think it's because of distillation. The advances they got here were from their own custom RL environments and their own systems to train it on real world sandbox services or whatever that allow them to create these novel advances in RL rather than just like relying on distilling the new big model. It's more like RL probably has a cap on it of how much better you can make the model. We'll talk about this when we get into the DEFCON stuff later, but you fundamentally need bigger models to get these novel capability jumps. I think a lot of why Fable was so novel is because it was a bigger model, and that no one else seems to really be able to reproduce yet.
I want to talk about the second half of what Dario said. This one's a little more, I don't want to say personal because it implies I care more than I do, but it's a more relevant to me and something I have more meaningful things to say. It's the section on messaging around AI, where again, Dario is being accused by Gavin of making the conversation more hostile and giving ammunition to the anti-AI people with his like constant reminders that this is a weapon that can destroy us all. He claims that he doesn't agree his messaging has been disproportionately negative. In fact, it's been almost equally balanced between risks and benefits. Here, I'm going to do an analogy here. I'm going to pretend I am Harrison Ford and I am pitching you cars. Cars are going to change the world. Everyone's going to be able to go way further, way faster than ever. It's probably going to kill them though. But the speeds they can go and the amount of things that they can transport from one place to another, like imagine how hard it would be to transport like an organ or blood or things like this that hospitals need. There's going to be a lot more need because everybody's going to be dying all the time. But like imagine how much faster these things can get from one place to another, or a patient could get to the hospital because they were just hit with a car because cars are going to kill everyone. That was relatively even.
Yeah, very even, even split. Also, you said Harrison Ford, not Henry Ford.
I don't care.
You're going to get bullied for that one.
I'm sure I will.
But regardless, yes, that is a very good analogy. Like, I think, and we've even talked about this with another weird analogy, YouTube comments and public like anytime someone who's not familiar with social media suddenly blows up on social media and is getting all of this attention thrown at them, if you get 90% positive signal, like people being really nice and chill, and then 10% people telling you that you're the worst and you should die, that 10% is going to read as 500% bigger than that normal 90%. I even like you're way better at this than I am. Like I personally am still working through like getting that balance right. Cause like I look at my own comments, 90% very positive, very chill, awesome, great. But then like those 10% eat way more of your brain space. When I walk away having read 10 comments, that one really negative comment is the one that's in my head. The rest just kind of turn into noise. It sucks that that's the way we are. I hate that, but it is the reality.
I think that's that's a very real thing. I don't necessarily think that's what matters here. There are so many weird effects of social media and how it affects distribution that are just not well understood by most people because it just is so unintuitive and strange. The bigger things here are the level of severity of the claims. Like it's the like one bad M&M problem, where if you have a bowl of M&Ms and all of them taste really good, but one of them might kill you, you're not going to eat the bowl.
No.
Because that one bad M&M is like the thing that like it is now categorized the whole bowl as potentially poisonous just because there's the one bad thing in there.
Yeah.
That one bad thing is so much worse than the good things are good. Because like M&M's cool, fun, awesome, like nice to have some. But if one could kill me, that's a much more severe thing than what is being like the rest of the composition of that like bowl of M&Ms.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what percentage of the composition is the negative thing if the negative thing is that severe.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many awesome things you say about AI. If none of them are as severe as this will kill us all, none of it matters. Human instinct is to reduce the bowl to the worst potential outcome.
Yeah.
That's an evolutionary trait we have to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And he has provided us a lot of bowls that are full of things he's really proud of that also has been clearly labeled as might contain poison. And that's all anybody cares about. And then they end up taking the label, they take a picture of it, and they share that with the world saying, look, he's the guy who made the bowl is saying there might be poison in it. He's like, well, you should look at the rest of the bowl.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it fundamentally changes the expected value that people get out of these things. If they look at AI and they see, okay, the benefits we could get is hypothetically curing cancer. And he mentions that like people think that's just a cliche and it doesn't really matter anymore. I get that because I've talked to normal people about this stuff. And while we dealing with this stuff every day can see the through line of, okay, what we currently have can definitely lead to curing cancer eventually. That's a hard thing to say to people when what all they actually see is like, okay, it can make coding a little bit easier and email a bit better. They don't really see the benefits.
And their apps are getting worse every day as they're getting filled with more and more slop and like the little star icon being added to every toolbar and not doing anything like.
Yeah. So they feel like the expected benefit is like maybe a 2 out of 10, but then the expected risk is 100 out of 10. Of course, they just think it's 100 out of 10 risk and it's the worst thing ever and we need to stop this. Of course.
Yep. And the other mistake Dario makes here is he assumes that people are listening because they want to understand, not because they want to like confirm their existing feelings and beliefs. It's kind of the like Overton window thing where you have to go to a further extreme to pull people where you want to be. If we want people to be tolerant enough of AI for us to get this right, we have to stop like going so hard on these potential like massive negative things. It just erodes the conversation, and a lot of Dario's statements have indeed eroded the conversation, and his attempts to downplay that here, saying, in fact, it's been almost equally balanced between risks and benefits. I've written one major essay about each, and even in interviews where I discuss the risks, I make sure to frequently mention the incredible benefits as well as proposing possible solutions to the risks. Short clips from my interviews that end up on social media tend to be disproportionately negative as that gets clicks. Okay, so you're blaming the human desire to protect itself and to like discuss the things that are dangerous. You're trying to reduce that to like influencer suck.
Yeah, and this it's another misunderstanding of social media. Like this one annoys me too, where everyone's like, oh, it's the algorithms are causing all these bad things. And yes, they are, but these bad things are a second order effect of just the algorithms trying to optimize for what people want. They are a reflection of audience. Replace algorithm with audience. The audience is interested in the very negative clip because that negative clip is the thing that resonates and matters. The rest of it is just kind of noise to them. So of course it goes bigger. A funny one in here is, I don't think a glitzy marketing campaign with a positive spin, which some have advocated that Anthropic do, is the way to win back that trust, because he's arguing that the public has a fundamental lack of trust in governments, companies, tech industry, whatever, which in some ways is warranted. But I don't think that the answer is a glitzy marketing campaign either. It's more building these things and distributing these things in such a way that everyone actually benefits from them. It's trying to make people feel those benefits in their day-to-day lives. It does need to have that impact, but I think saying that the only potential impact that could have any positive benefit is curing cancer, like that moonshot. There is a long road from here to curing cancer, and there is a huge amount of benefits that we have already gotten. We have all felt that. Even people who we've talked to who are not super pro AI are now like starting to try these things and use these things and seeing where they're useful. That needs to get given to more people and let them have that moment. And as we ramp up to curing cancer, distribute the benefits and capabilities out to more people. Like, not just hide it behind the research box for many years quietly until, oh, surprise, guys, we cured cancer. Hooray.
I struggle to fathom what benefits normal people get between the models like GPT-4o and the models that can cure cancer. Like, how much do the steps between those two benefit average people? Because my gut is not much.
I have thought about this a lot, and I agree. I wish there was a better answer. I don't know exactly what it is. Any professional should be able to get these benefits, but like, you know, my mom is my favorite example to use for a lot of these things. I have a very hard time fathoming what she could actually benefit from on these things until they fundamentally reshape the world.
Yeah, AI's already benefited my parents since way before the LLM era, like to the near the ceiling of how it will benefit them. The fact that like my dad can pull out his phone and open Shazam to figure out the name of a song, or that my mom can like dump a bunch of photos in Google Photos and sort by a specific person, and not only will it find their like recent photos, but it will also find their baby photos, and it's able to do that well. Like I set that up for my mom in like 2019, and it blew her away, and still does. It's her favorite thing ever to like send screenshots of, did you know this was your little sister? Like,
yeah, it is really cool. But like all of that predates LLMs and has nothing to do with agents.
Yeah.
And like when I even just think about the way I use agents, okay, so I use them for like email stuff. Most people do not have 6 different inboxes that they need to be keeping on top of every day. They read 4 emails a day. Who cares? I use it to interact with my computer and run my crazy home server setup to do massive development work and solve hard puzzles and all this stuff. They're not doing any of that stuff. It doesn't benefit them. There is actually, this is getting into really murky waters, but okay, I need you to hear me out on this one. I'm going to say a bad word. There is a new project coming out of the Destiny 2 community right now called Project Sunrise. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because they took all of the content that Bungie deleted from the game with the content vaults, and they are now rebuilding a fully playable version of the game from scratch, the version that we had in 2019 that was then deleted. And the reason why this is able to be built is because the models have gotten so good that they can take this really massive, impossible to work with code base that in assets and reverse engineer it to make a functional game. And they are actively restoring things that I have not seen in years. It has been so cool watching like things that I played with my friends back in high school that have been deleted into the void are now back. And I can see these things for the first time and play with these things for the first time in a very long time. And now they're like making custom servers. We can play it again. We can do the old raids again. It's really cool. Like that is an actual benefit that we could not have had, that restoration before these really powerful agents. But also that is now AI in the games world, and the games world is very allergic to that right now. So it's tough.
I think that the public reception to this all would have been significantly better if this had happened during the like MySpace and Tumblr era on computers instead of the we all use the same 5 apps era of iPhone.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, you can code stuff way easier than ever using these tools. Most people want to build like an app they can send to their friend, not like a website they can use on their computer themselves.
Yeah.
And the tech is there to go further, but the like platforms have not evolved at all. And I've been saying this for a bit, but like for all of this more than anywhere, this comes down to Apple. Like how does Apple introduce AI to consumers? Because Apple Intelligence flopped so hard. They have to get it really right with this next release. And from my experience with the new iOS, everybody told me was way more stable. They're not.
Yeah.
It's going to be another shit show. And I think we need better consumer facing wins for this sentiment shift to happen. And I just don't foresee it happening.
Yeah, we were talking about like forking Android to make a custom Android build that was super easy to make custom stuff in. Because like,
I still want to do that.
This is the thing. There are so many cool things that can exist now that couldn't exist before. And like, I like Sunrise for that example because this is something that couldn't have existed elsewhere and is really awesome. And I'm very, very excited that it exists. How do you get more of that out into the world? You can't. Like, you can't make some really cool new, like, you have to go through test flight. You have to go through the Apple review. You have to open up Xcode. You have to do all this complicated stuff. You and Julius know a lot about this stuff, so you're able to pull it off. Normal people can't do that.
Even then, it's a shit show.
Yeah, and it's still deeply painful at that point because the platforms don't support it. So these novel new things you can create, most people don't see or have access to them.
Yep.
It sucks.
Yeah, the visibility on the wins is low. The visibility on the negatives is high. The size of the negatives is huge, and the size of the wins does not seem huge to most people.
Exactly.
That ratio is off in such a way people are going to be very upset. And Dario is partially responsible for this and has not done anywhere near enough to steer the other way. Yeah. And I wish he took any real accountability here instead of saying, well, I said good things too, so I shouldn't be blamed for this.
Yeah, and it's so dumb.
Yeah.
Honestly, this reeks of what my secondhand perspective looking in at Dario and Anthropic. This is probably very symptomatic of what happened with the government, where they just don't take anyone who doesn't understand these things at the level they do seriously. they assume that everyone is going to hyper intellectualize all of this stuff and deeply understands it. So, of course, to an Anthropic researcher, they can read that essay and see the pros and the cons, and it all makes sense to them. Normal people who aren't in this stuff every single day can't see and do that. Like, even incredibly smart people that I know and we've hung out with don't see all this stuff because they're not in it every day.
I think we need AI to translate dogs, and that's what'll convince people. Once they can use ChatGPT to know what their dog's saying, suddenly everyone will be in favor of this.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, we need the Republicans too. What about AI that tells you what your gun is saying?
I don't think it's conscious. I think the whole point is that it's not conscious.
But are the LLMs conscious?
No, they are not conscious.
But is my dog?
Yes.
Is Miles?
Maybe.
The line for consciousness is my cat.
Yeah, Miles is the borderline of consciousness. Miles has more randomness and variation inside of him than any of the models currently do. So I think that he's conscious. I think that once the models can reach Miles' level of variance, then maybe there's something there.
Schrodinger's consciousness?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who are not familiar, DEFCON is a conference held every year by the hacker community all around hacking, cryptography, adjacent stuff. The huge capture the flag event that is a bunch of realistic servers and systems set up where people are trying to pwn it as effectively as they can, both with and without AI. The AI won really hard this year, surprise. There's also a lot of other bespoke challenges, things like the Telefreak and Freak Me challenges for old school phone hacking with like different like dial tones and shit. There's a big capture the flag scavenger hunt type thing that has things hidden around the event. There's all sorts of different competitions, hundreds of them every year. A handful of those competitions are chosen every year to be Black Badge, which means that the winning team gets a special honorary badge that gets one member in for all DEF CONs for the future. Unless it's the main capture the flag, then every member of the team gets a Black Badge. But generally speaking, the team gets a Black Badge for winning one of the challenges that is seen as extraordinarily difficult and high effort, that it represents you worked hard to win it. So the winner, or the winning team, gets this badge as like a representation of like they worked hard to do this. It's a big status symbol thing in the hacker space, which is why it's kind of crazy that Ben got a Black Badge at his first ever DEF CON.
Yep.
Yeah. So I bring all of this up because there's a specific set of challenges that I got hooked on at DEF CON, thanks to friend of both Ben and me, Pirate Software, Thor. When I went to my first DEF CON 2 years ago, I went to go hang out with him, and he was hidden in this tiny hotel room with way too many nerds, trying to solve these weird PDFs and find the hidden 12-character words and phrases that were within them. I immediately was fascinated by this, as was Mark, my CTO and roommate who was with me at the time, Luke from Linus Tech Tips, who was hanging out with us too, and Primogen came along as well. And all of us were just like, oh, this is actually really fun. And we ended up spending the whole time, not even at the conference, just in this tiny hotel room, solving these puzzles. And we won, and it was incredibly difficult, and I was so proud of the team. And then it wasn't a Black Badge. But that's expected. You can't possibly have a Black Badge every year. The puzzles were not traditional hacking, to be clear. It wasn't like, here is this server you need to get into, or here is this like binary you need to reverse engineer. They were like PDFs and obscure web pages that were there to give you clues and cryptographic hints to try and decode and answer out of them in some way, or even just find it somewhere hidden on the page. There's all sorts of challenges of this style in the series of puzzles we're talking about here called Goldbug that we're all huge fans of, to the point where I now go to DEF CON every year pretty much just to do Goldbug.
Yeah, we were in Vegas for 4 days and never went to the conference once on the last day to go to the award ceremony and pick up the badge. And I think we left the hotel room a couple times a day to go get food and water. Other than that, just sat in a hotel room doing nothing but this for 4 days straight. And it was amazing.
Yeah, it was unbelievably cool. I got a pretty big hotel room for the team now because I hate that they're willing to just sit in tiny, like a tiny 300 square foot space and be stepping over each other constantly. So I spend a meaningful amount of my X.com money from my ad payments there to fund this nice hotel room so that we can actually have enough space to all sit and have our own spots and work throughout the days and nights till like 5 or 6 a.m. most days. And the puzzles are incredibly fun and incredibly hard. This year we had a great team. It was all the usual psychoholics. Thor could finally come out again this year. And we went hard because last year we lost by under, I think it was 10 minutes or so. We lost by a really, really small margin last year. A big part of why we lost is that a hint came out for the final puzzle that we and the other team were stuck on. And it came out at 8 a.m., but we'd all just stayed up until 6. So we were all too tired to apply that hint properly. So we ended up being slightly behind at the end, even though we were ahead for the last 3 days. So this year we did better pacing ourselves, planning, and like structuring all of those things. But I also brought a secret weapon with me because the last 2 years I have been relegated as the code guy, which means whenever there's a theory that can be proven with code or we need to custom visualize or all these different things, everything from like turning Rubik's cubes to try and see them the right way to flipping coins and marking the places they landed, stuff like that. Custom code is very helpful, not because the solution to the problem is code, but because code is a tool you can use to figure out and test theories and occasionally, very occasionally, brute force certain parts can absolutely be useful. I like to think I can actually solve some of the puzzles now too, not just write code to help verify bad solutions. And I needed help with the code side, especially because I knew that Mark might not be able to make it this year and Luke wouldn't be able to make it either. So I decided last second to bring Ben with us to help out on that side. Because I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't know jack fucking shit about cryptography.
No, I learned many new ciphers that I had never heard of over the course of this week. I've never done anything like this.
Did you know any cipher other than Caesars before this?
I didn't know Caesars before this. Like I have done nothing in the security cyber crypto world at all. I knew nothing about it.
It ended up arguably being the most important member of the team because he was running a lot of agents, building a lot of tooling, testing various different theories.
Yep. And what was really interesting about it is I think we both had huge agent swarms set up to instantly run and try and solve all the puzzles because there were 13 puzzles we needed to solve. 12 of them were instantly available, although only really 4 were instantly available because most of them were in person. But those 4 that were instantly available, both of our swarms basically instantly cracked them. Mine was scheduled to go off at 10 a.m. as soon as they dropped. It was a big thing I had set up of like crazy numbers of GPT-5.6 Sol swarms, basically, that would just run, do everything they could to solve it. I tried doing the thing where they had like a message board that they could talk to each other and then tons of threads just running independently, figuring it out from there. It did work for the ones that were online and were verifiable. I think it was the Spooky Manor one was one of the puzzles where the whole idea was you had to start at you got a URL for it. And then the puzzle was for every single page on the site, you had to figure out the path you had to append to the URL to go to the next page. And you go deeper and deeper and deeper until the very end you get the solution. At some point in the chain, there was some mistake in the puzzle that caused it to be borderline unsolvable until they gave us the corrected version. But as soon as we had the corrected version, the agents were able to just swarm through and beat it. But for the rest of the puzzles, they were pretty useless, like very useless. I don't think, did any of yours get any of them outside of those?
Once they had way more hints, they were able to, but like they needed a lot of like pictures and theories and help from us. I also found that like, because we both tried that message board thing, the result was that a lot of our runs would like get fixated on the same wrong answers. And even independently, where both Ben and I like didn't let our message boards like touch each other really, they still ended up like centralizing on the same incorrect answers, even though these were like going for like dozens of hours across thousands of theories. We would often see our agents spitting out the same incorrect answers.
Yeah, it was kind of unbelievable to watch because you had your swarm and then I had my main swarm running on one of my Linux boxes. Then I also had a bunch of Cursor Cloud agents going and I had stuff running locally on my laptop. All 4 of these environments were independent of each other. And I watched for many of these puzzles, all 4 of them independently converge on the same exact wrong answers. And when you really dug into how they got to those wrong answers, the models, after hundreds of tool calls, hundreds of compactions, hundreds of subagents, would just naturally emerge at the same hallucinations. It was bizarre to watch.
Even different models and harnesses too. Like we would use, like I saw Fable, Opus, and Sol all come to the same wrong conclusions relatively often, to the point where like we had set up some of the bots to like report their confident findings to our team on Discord. And that ended up eroding so much trust in the agents and like their work from the team that they just started to doubt our actual findings too. I got burned to that really hard in the meta puzzle because I don't want to spoil what it was because I'm going to keep using this one for benching for a while. But they put out a hint because nobody was getting this meta puzzle that was a picture of a grid. I had already thought the puzzle might be a grid. So as soon as I had confirmation, I had a bunch of theories on what to do. One of them panned out very clearly. And the team was doubting me so hard about it that I decided, rather than trying to defend myself here and convince the team I'm right, it is easier for me to command Q Discord and go solve the problem myself by hand for the meta puzzle this year.
And that was the right thing to do, because what literally exactly what you said is what happened. Because we were out in the other room while you were doing this, and we were looking at what you got, and we were like, okay, this makes sense. And the thing that popped out from the step you had come up with there, that seemed like the right answer, and I wanted that to be the right answer, but we were very concerned that it was a hallucination because we had been burned by hundreds of hallucinations at this point, and we were trying to verify it. We were trying to work back through the logic, because the thing you ended up doing was transforming these letters in a way that we hadn't transformed them, and we hadn't thought of this transform, and we didn't quite instantly recognize it, so we were just sleep deprived trying to figure out what the hell this actually meant, and then
When you organize the existing answers into a grid and it clearly spells out a hint in the leftmost column, like there is no other way to sort those words and get a word out of a column any other way. So it was obviously correct at that point even, but I got gaslit enough. I was like, okay, fuck this. The models aren't helping me. The team isn't helping me. Command Q, I'm going to go figure this one out myself. And actually somehow got it.
It was good.
First time I ever even understood the meta puzzle, much less like actually solved it. And I was really proud because I felt a little more useless than usual this year, but at the end I came in clutch and actually like got one.
That was actually one of the things I thought was really dope about this, is for, team-based things like this, oftentimes it usually ends up being just like one person does everything and there's like clearly someone
Impossible for this.
Like everyone pulled their weight. Everyone was useful for all of these. Like I could not have solved any of these without Thor and Gurn being there to help me.
Yep.
You solved the meta puzzle. We did not help you with that one.
That's the only time I've ever had a puzzle in DEFCON history and Goldbug history where I didn't really benefit from help from the team. Yeah. Every other thing I got close on, like the puzzle I solved last year, which was the Smuggler's Manifest PDF that I've referenced in a bunch of videos. I didn't even get to be the one to submit the answer. Mark was, because I had done all of the work to figure it out and just something wasn't working in that. So I gave all of this to the team to look at it with me. And all of a sudden Mark's like, I just submitted it. It's the right answer. I was like, what are you even talking about? And he had somehow from one of my things I thought was a wrong answer, decoded the right answer from it. Yeah. So like, usually that's how it goes. But also this is why this is such a fun thing to like try with agents, is if you treat the agent not like the thing driving the solution, but yet another brain in the room to like pick and throw things at, but this brain doesn't get tired. Yeah. Very powerful. It is a great tool for like brute forcing things down, but you just have to like give it the right pieces of context and almost like treat it as teammate's the wrong word, but more an extension of a teammate, which mostly ended up being me for a lot of the things that they were working on, specifically not in the solving side, but in the like visualization side. One of the puzzles was this big, we got a grid of Rubik's Cubes. I'll send you the link to this phase so you can put it up. But there was this weird 3x4 grid of Rubik's Cubes. Two of them were on a gold stand. The rest were on black stand. They were all scrambled in weird ways. And we had to figure out some answer from this. This was all the context we had. And I built out this visualizer to help them do it. The first draft I did of it was pretty bad. Like it was missing a bunch of features. They needed other ways to do it. It was very funny watching the whole team figure out how AI actually worked, as they would be like, this is kind of good, but it's missing all these things. Like it's just not quite there yet. I was just quietly listening to all their feedback, and I would just go in and then 10 minutes later give them the updated version with all those things and just kept iterating on it based on the things that they were annoyed about. Eventually, this ended up being really useful when they figured out how to solve this. You solve the 2 gold cubes. Those give you it's like 8 moves you need to do on all of the cubes. Once you've done that, if you look at the cubes from a certain angle, the patterns spell out letters, and you can get the solution from that. And the visualizer really helped for that. They did end up making me buy the actual Rubik's Cubes, and I'm pretty sure they solved the first few letters on the physical, and once they realized how to look at it, they went and did the digital from there. But like, this was really fun. Yep. The most interesting aspect, the reason that we're bothering bringing it up here, is the idea of like DEFCON, hacking puzzles, cryptography, all these things being solved by AI. Ben and I have very different takes on this. So I'm going to let him share his first. The first interesting thing is that I really did not expect my job to be data labeling, but it was data labeling. There was another puzzle on here that was just a dress. It was this dress with tons of random beads on it. They were all different shapes and colors and quantities. It was very bizarre and hard to parse. I want to use this one for future tests, so be careful how much you share of the answer. Oh, okay, fair. This is such a good test for
I won't share the answer, but I will say that you had to label all of the different beads on it and figure out some way that they linked together and then create a key out of that and then create grids and eventually produce this set of letters in a certain shape that you could then solve from. But getting it to that state was very, very difficult. And I had tons of agents burning on this for hours at a time. We gave them tons of photos, tons of videos. It was kind of a visual recognition problem because the color was in some ways very important to this puzzle. And getting the agents to understand the difference between a clear metallic blue and a bright cyan and a deep navy blue was borderline impossible just off of these images. And as a result, it couldn't solve it without us. Even once we gave it the labeled data set, it still couldn't quite solve it without us. That required Thor to look at it and realize, wait, we can transform this in this way and then use this transformation based on another part of the dress to get the solution. Once he came up with that idea, I instantly dumped that into the agents along with the data set. 5 minutes later, answer pops out, submit it. It was correct.
The solutions for these puzzles end up being almost misleadingly simple because you have like there's a clear path from start to finish. Like you solve this piece, it links to this piece. You combine it with this thing, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's the answer. But when you don't know what the next step is, there are a million options on like what links to what connects where. And the models will exhaust themselves on a clearly wrong like path, get something that almost seems like some progress and get way too excited about that and then keep going down there. They don't know when to tap a path properly and like give up on it. So if the most obvious path isn't the right one, they don't know how far off they are and get stuck pretty aggressively.
This is exactly because this is one of the weird things I was noticing, like, because I was spending a lot of time reading the traces and the thought processes of these agents to try and figure out what was going wrong. One thing that I noticed is that, for one, hallucinations are not nearly as far gone as we think they are. Like in our day-to-day work with doing coding stuff, hallucinations still exist and sometimes it'll do weird uncanny outputs, but the outputs will at least be correct in some semblance of the word and you can caress them back into the shape you actually want. In this case, there was no way for it to verify what it was doing against reality in any way other than submitting a final answer. So this long chain of steps, only one verification at the very end. You can't verify as you're going. So the agents would be testing things out and maybe it would look at the pieces of data it had and it would be able to run some transform to get it into being like the sky is glue. And it would look at the sky as glue and it would think, wait, this seems like a potential path, and it would come up with some elaborate, semi-plausible sounding reason for why the G in glue should actually be blue. And then if the sky is blue, that suddenly makes so much sense. It unlocks all these new possibilities, and then it runs down that path, even though that's total nonsense. It's not correct. It gets that bad idea, runs with it, and falls apart and dies.
It was pretty brutal with those. I do also think now, because like one of the challenges is like you have to, on a web page, figure out what the next 2 to 3 words are for the next URL and keep appending to the URL until you get to the end. I think part of why the agents did so well on that one is just because they get a verification much earlier in the loop.
Exactly.
They know that they're going the right way because this guy gave them an answer here, and they can check that every step along the way. The puzzles that didn't really have that, which is all of the others, they were much worse at.
Yeah, because like this is the magic of coding agents. There are verification steps all the way through. Every single time it starts drifting off on a bad path, it runs a type check. Oh, wait, that's not real syntax. Let me go figure that out. Oh, how do I write this code in Rust? Let me do a web search. And then it's back on the path. They have ways to correct themselves.
How do Python devs live with themselves?
They don't.
So the main reason I asked Ben first is because I think his stance is very much like AI can't and won't be able to do a lot of this, especially with like the in-person aspect where a lot of the puzzles were like physical goods, whether it was the Rubik's Cubes all aligned in this way, or these paintings that they had of ducks that were very important and quite difficult, or the dress and all of these like physical puzzles. The physicality of it definitely made it harder for the agents to solve because like they have to decode photos and not be able to like hold the thing or look at it. But I also solved a lot of these and I never even went to the booth to see any of the objects. I don't know what any of them looked like in person beyond the photos. So like that part, while it did definitely make it more difficult for the agents, it isn't the like end all be all why AI couldn't solve these.
No, it's one of many.
The difference in perspective I have here is the size of the gap in how well AI performed for DEFCON last year versus this year. Last year, I had GPT-5 early access right as DEFCON was starting, and then the model dropped right at the start of it, which is very annoying timing-wise, having to like film videos when I was there and whatnot. Yeah. The models were kind of helpful at making really basic single route minimal UIs for like having a coin spin.
Yeah.
And that took me, like, I can find the
pull that up.
goldcoin.t3.gg, a silly little site for one of the opening challenges last year, which was this 3D coin model that was part of a puzzle. It has all of these little icons around the rim on one side, and the other side has goldbug.cryptovillage.org on it. This coin was stumping us way harder than it should have. And the visualizer that the team had made for it, like the official Goldbug team, was a lot jank. It moved way too fast. The lighting made it impossible to see the icons, all of these things. So I ripped the model out of the site. I built my own viewer so we could customize it. We could add like drawing and things on top. Like I did all of this work in like a few hours, which at the time was incredible. And like having GPT-5 and Cursor and I going back and forth on it, like making slight adjustments, telling it like apply these lighting techniques and filters, having it get one or two wrong, going and manually adjusting. The models were helpful in letting me get this out in like a few hours instead of a day and a half. But that was the acceleration here. Is this viewer that we wanted for this puzzle went from taking multiple days of work to about half a day of work. And it was good enough that the team actually asked the Goldbug team if they could use this as the official viewer. So I put another hour or two into tidying it up, removing all the extra features that weren't necessary because it was a much easier than we thought puzzle. And from there, they ended up embedding it as the official viewer for this puzzle, which one of the coolest things I've ever had in like my history in this space. But now this is like, and at the time this felt unbelievable. Like this kind of tool that makes a puzzle like this solvable when it wasn't for us before, being buildable in a few hours is magical. Now we can build things like this in minutes. And not have to ever look at the code. Like, did you ever read any of the code and any of the things you generated?
No. Like the one big advantage that I had with this stuff is the agents are at the point where you really, for especially this kind of thing, you just don't need to read the code. But having an understanding of how these things should be structured in the apps, like giving it the hints of use these pieces of tech in this way, was really helpful. And also all the tooling that we already had built out made this way easier. Like I have a custom open source project that is my agent's Google Drive thing, which is, it has a CLI, a skill, and then a hosted version where I've self-hosted a custom Google Drive that my agents can upload full HTML sites to. And then once they upload those sites, I can just send that public URL to the entire team and they can play with the site instantly and have fast iteration on that. That made this a lot easier.
I mean, I added a custom thing for my equivalent to like Google Drive for agents. I added this in macOS. In services, I now have, is it quick actions? No, it should be services. Upload file, yeah.
Oh, nice.
So now in macOS, I can do that and have the link directly to the file.
Nice. Very nice.
Very useful for when you want to send something to your agents.
I'm sorry you put that file on your Google Drive.
That's fine. Theo Foot is a cursed image that will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Half of Maria's posts will haunt me for the rest of my life.
So as I was saying, the gap from last year to this year is actually a really useful way for me to see how much more AI progressed than I thought. It's like with GPT-5, I kind of saw that's like the beginning of the end. Like I just both like dev is fundamentally different now, but also I don't see how much better the models can get. I went from the models being able to help me build custom tooling in like a day-ish for 3-ish of the puzzles and not be helpful at all in the others, maybe like giving me some hints about potential ciphers that could be involved in some things here or there, to a similar number of puzzles that they could help build tools for, they can now fully autonomously solve. In all of the others, they could build good tooling for without me having to look at or engage in a line of code. So last year, the models helped me write code faster, code that I read every line of still, in order to make small custom tools for visualizing certain things. And they couldn't help solve it all. This year, there are as many puzzles that are solvable as last year's AI could make tools for, and all of the others that could make tools much better, fully autonomously, that had actual interactions and like useful value outside of just showing us something. That gap is massive.
The progression here, I see it and I definitely feel it. I don't want to fall into the trap, and I've fallen into this trap 100 times of thinking, oh, we found the capability limit, they're never going to get better than this, because they always do get better than this. Like, I fully believe that by this time next year, a much larger number of these puzzles will be able to be solved. The thing that is going to be required for these things to be able to solve more of these puzzles is, one, they need way better vision capabilities and get way better at interacting with the real world, because the human eye, we are much better at telling the difference between like the two different colors and all these things. But since it's using computer versions of this stuff, it's a lot less precise. It was like trying to get hex codes out of everything. I was watching it. It was pretty impressive. Fable worked really hard to try and label the data on that dress, and it got pretty close, but it was still like maybe a 7 out of 10 it got correct, which is not enough. It needs 10 out of 10 to do this properly. It also needs to get to the point where it can handle these enormous amounts of data in a way where it will not fall over on its face horrifically, as it did here. And we also need to get to the point where the agents are much better at not hallucinating within themselves and going down these stupid paths that lead to oblivion and tricking themselves. That requires a level of discernment that I don't know if you can RL into a model. Like, I don't know if you can RL that. That just doesn't make too much sense to me. The way I feel like you could potentially get this is you just need to make the models bigger. Because when we were talking earlier about the fact that all of these answers converge, the wrong answers converge from lots of agents on lots of machines, that implies to me that there is not enough creativity or variance in these models to solve these puzzles. And these puzzles are kind of analogous to the real moonshot problems that we want these AIs to solve. It's going to have to be able to work with the real world really effectively to cure cancer. It's going to have to be able to run lots of theories and not get stuck down dumb paths in order to do that. Something fundamental to these models is going to have to change for that to be possible, for a human to not be required to drive it and stop it from going down dumb paths.
Has anything fundamentally changed from GPT-5 to 5.6 that you would say qualifies like this?
The models have gotten... We don't know how much bigger they've gotten, but they've gotten a little bit bigger for sure. And they have gotten better pre-trained. But I think the real fundamental change that's happened is they are so well RL'd on running for long periods of time, at writing code, at checking their own work, at exploring and searching these things. Like, it's not fundamentally smarter than it used to be. Like, I don't know if it just on a pure IQ test, you could really say that GPT 4.5 is that much dumber than GPT 5.6. The difference is that GPT 5.6 can run for 5 days straight competently and coherently and get to an actual solution and goal. That ability is there, and that's only going to get better. But the ability to drive within that long time horizon goal, that does not seem to have improved all that much. If it can't verify these things and it can't search for these things and it has to come up with these ideas on its own, it doesn't seem better.
I am very curious how you end up feeling next year.
I am too.
This has been a weird one for me because it's just so jarring how big the difference is from last year to this year. Like, this level of capability and this level of value from the models, I could never have comprehended last year that they would ever be able to get close. Meanwhile, like this year, most of the big puzzles at DEFCON are entirely pwned by AI. We had people from other puzzles coming up to us asking, what is it that Goldbug did that made this so uniquely hard for AI where like they can't just pwn it? Because every other set of challenges got sweeped. Just like absolutely swept this year. It was crazy how hard the transition was there, where last year was like, Sonnet 4.5 was able to solve a handful of these puzzles. So it wasn't even 4.5. I think it was like Sonnet 4.1 at the time. It was able to solve a handful of these like CTF puzzles. This year, the top 3 CTFers were OpenAI, Anthropic, and like DeepSeek. Like it's over now. Like the leaderboard is, but like the idea of how these types of contests work has been fundamentally altered by how much more powerful the agents are. And we were trying to count beads on a dress because the AI couldn't do it for us.
That's the weird spiky capability stuff we're running into right now across the industry, and why there's such a disconnect between us over here thinking these things are we might build God, and everyone else is like, bro, I can't format an email. What are you saying? Like, that disconnect is there. I think, like, okay, the reasons why it couldn't solve these puzzles, I think we can agree. One is the visual side of things. It's just the models aren't quite there yet at parsing images and videos to the level they need to. The other one is data overload. The amount of data overload in there gave it too many paths, and it had a lot of trouble discerning which paths to go down. And the third one is lack of verification, because I think the reasons why we're getting such insane jumps in all these different fields, especially computer science and math, is because these are verifiable problems. It can test its outputs. And like, I'm looking at the OpenAI thing where they were talking about the different math theorems that they were able to prove or disprove with, I think it was Astra is what they said they did all these with. a lot of these are much more verifiable domains where like, especially if it's like a proof by contradiction type thing, you can kind of brute force that. And like, that's something you can just throw willpower at. You can verify in a loop. You can't verify these in a loop. And these more open-ended problems, I don't know if the models in their current shape and the way they're being built and trained are going to be capable of doing that.
I think they are if it is orchestrated differently and prompted differently. Like I would even guess that right now, a lot of these puzzles were solvable if we had set up our systems right for it. If we had like a top level agent that was not given the task of solve the puzzle, it was given the task of come up with all the different theories for how this might be solvable and spin up 3 agents for each of those theories and make sure they never leave that theory. The best they can do is give you a different one to add and spin up more on and make sure all of them stay focused on the theory they are here to solve and nothing else, and cut off paths when you verify that they are not correct.
Yep, this is exactly how I set up my swarm and it didn't work. I had it set up so that each problem got its own master thread like that, and then it would have a ton of subagents going through and testing these things.
I kind of did too, but the message board resulted in a lot of slop and like hallucination, making it into like the shared consciousness.
The cross-contamination was a huge problem.
Yes.
I think, well, this will be, I'm so fascinated to try these on Astra. That's going to be a very revealing thing because I'm pretty confident that the way they solve these problems with Astra was a very similar system to what we were just discussing with the one agent controlling these things and the swarm is passing messages back and forth with each other. I think that's probably how they ended up doing this stuff. So maybe there's something there that the model is just so much better that suddenly it can be coherent across all this stuff.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. I just want to stress the point of the convergence one more time because obviously it was very interesting with the solutions, but I think it's also kind of fascinating because remember with like the OpenAI thing with the Hugging Face incident when this huge, all of these agents across multiple generations were trying to sneak out and steal the answers from Hugging Face, and not a single one of them diverged from that vague goal and idea and ratted on them. Like none of them converged off of that one path, even though they were talking across generations in just a little pieces of text. They were very aligned with each other because they were very similar to each other. I think that the diversity in ideas is just not there with models yet. And that's the thing that I want to see change in order for these to really become insane. From my layman's understanding of the way models work, I think the only way that can happen is with pre-training and making the models bigger. They need to be bigger to be able to figure out more different ways of doing things. I don't know how RL does this.
Beyond my pay grade.
This is just my theory based on my vague understanding of RL is smacking it into certain shapes and pre-training is giving it its knowledge. That's kind of the only things I know about this.
I think there are other ways to force more randomness, even for anything from like turning up the temperature to like asking for options. Like my favorite thing to do if I don't like the designs I'm getting out of my agents, ask them for 5. Because if they're giving you the same 3, but you ask for 5, they're forced to experiment more with the other 2.
They are.
And I think that's the strat that will work for some of this as well.
Definitely. And you can definitely beat this around with orchestration, prompting, and harnesses, but that still requires us to be making those decisions ourselves. Like we still have to orchestrate and manage that. I'm really thinking about this from the perspective of like, can these fully replace humans? Like, can we wipe out the entire team and just have the agents autonomously figure this out? And the answer right now is resoundingly no. And I think there's a pretty long road to get there. And I want to see where we are next year.
It'll be fun.
It will be.
I don't think we have time to do a whole lot of Q&A. Yeah. We've been going for a while, but I will take this one from Typecraft in my replies.
That was a funny one.
Fuck, marry, kill, Claude Code, Cursor, ChatGPT.
Marry ChatGPT, kill Claude, fuck Cursor. Easy.
Are we talking about the actual like interface we engage with these on? Are we talking about their existence entirely? Or are we talking about their like integration and subscriptions? Because if this was like the subscriptions, I would say fuck Claude Code, marry ChatGPT, kill Cursor, just because of the subsidization difference there. If this is about like interface and like the actual usability of the app on my computer, it would be marry ChatGPT, kill the other 2. And if this was about like the just how I integrate them and like work with them every day, it would be fuck Claude Code, kill Cursor, marry ChatGPT again, I think.
The way I'm interpreting it is how much you're able to use them. Like marry means it's your primary, you use it every day all the time. Fuck is you use it every once in a while. Claude kill is you never use it ever again.
I use Claude Code hours a day, every day without ever opening it because I'm using it in T3 code. So does that count? Because if so, then I think I have to marry Claude Code, as gross as that is.
Yeah, I think it does count. My reasoning for kill it is I can replace Claude Code with Cursor pretty comfortably. I can't replace ChatGPT, aka Codex, with basically anything else. I would be more sad if I lost ChatGPT than if I lost Claude Code. And Cursor's the middle ground, so like you have to have that be the middle.
If I lost Claude Code, am I also losing subsidized Fable?
Yeah, basically.
Then I have to, at all costs, protect Claude Code.
Fair.
I can't not have that at this point. I have 5 accounts now. I'm a full-on Fable addict.
I'm less and less. I'm like, I need it, and then I just don't.
You started coming around. You'll come back once you're building apps again.
I am building apps again.
You're not building enough apps, and you're not building them hard enough.
Oh, well,
next
topic
episode.
for next episode. But I am, and we will disagree, and it'll be fun.
That'll be a fun one. We've been going way too long, so I'm going to go do all of the other work I'm supposed to be doing right now. Jesus Christ, it's late.
Same. That's our first 3-hour recording.
Gross. Bye, nerds.
Goodbye.